watching usanow.tv. Welcome to a special episode of Education Matters we like to call the Shadow Board. With your host, Dr. Harry Jackson, reporting today on Fairfax County, Virginia School Board in live time with co-hosts Stephanie Lundquist-Arora and Brian Davison. Now your host, Harry Jackson.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Shadow Board with your host, me, Harry Jackson, and with other guests, Stephanie Lundquist-Arora and Brian Davison. Tonight we're going to be going live to the FCPS, Fairfax County School Board session already in progress. We're going to have a discussion and review of this week's work session meeting, as well as the agenda for the items that we're going to go through today. While they're going through this, we can also do a recap of what we had seen. Sorry about that. Stephanie, Brian, good evening.
Good evening. It's great to be here tonight. Harry, Brian, how are you guys?
Good evening, all.
I am doing well. Right now,
happy to be here.
I am sorry if I'm a little delayed, guys, because I have a dual feed. For the audience, I'm actually doing double duty. I'm actually hosting the live stream and a little bit from my studio, which is difficult because I've got like multiple audio feeds here. So if you have a little delay.
Yeah, Harry, if we can get you a little closer to your microphone. I'm not sure what's going on, but your audio when you're speaking is kind of cutting in and out. I think you're a little far away.
Yeah,
there we go. That's much better, sir.
Hey, Sam, would you be able to host while we go through this, at least the community participation, then cut out?
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I'm here for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, like, I've got a.
No, we just did this for
bad feedback.
Well, oh no. Yeah, I don't have this set up on my end to do that, but I can.
Oh, okay.
I can. No worries. Give me just a few minutes if you want to go ahead and get the backstory.
All right.
Yeah, I have to make some changes here in my studio because I thought we were doing this all. What's happening, folks? We're trying to give Harry some capabilities to be able to send the audio to you remotely. So if I got to jump later, he can control the volume and when they talk over the meeting later on. So let me go ahead and pull this up.
I'm going to jump out of the meeting so I can talk because right now I've got nothing but dual feedback here.
It's cool that you're learning how to produce, Harry.
I know.
It's a difficult skill, it seems.
So I have to go. Actually, I probably should use my other computer. So I'm going to go ahead and just exit out all completely. That is much better. Okay, so while Sam is setting that up, I can actually hear. Wow, that is very challenging. I'm going to now. I know I'm going to have to put like one of my teenagers to work or something.
We just need to have time to set it up, man. It's not.
Yeah.
I can walk you through it. I can walk you through it.
We'll walk through it. I mean, I'll go back into it later on tonight. Hopefully, we probably won't have a full 4 hours here because interestingly enough, I mean, I had the opportunity to attend this week's work session where they had on the schedule, they were supposed to cover a few things: the strategic plan, the ACE, adult education. They're supposed to cover career and technical education, and they were supposed to cover special needs. It's quite interesting. Actually, and for the first time, they actually posted the work session video before the school board meeting. They haven't done that in years. Isn't that amazing, guys?
That's because you were there. They knew that you're going to talk about it. It was because
I was there. I was there, and I was there to talk about it. And interestingly enough, it wasn't streamed live, but yet somehow one of these activists got a hold of the video feed and started harassing me online. And when I started noticing when I was there that they were training the camera directly on me for about a good 30, 35 minutes, I just took a quick snapshot and posted it on Twitter. And it's amazing that now for the sake of transparency that they actually posted that feed up live. So you're welcome, Fairfax County, for transparency. But these school board work sessions, this is where the information is. They are more useful going to the work sessions or viewing the work sessions than is actually the school board session itself. So I have a question. So now that we've had 3 years of really nothing good happening in Fairfax County. Academic performance has dipped. We had COVID learning loss. We've had the introduction of racially divisive concepts. Now we have transgender. We're finding out all sorts of different things. And even in Arlington, it was leaked, and it's happening here in Fairfax, that they're even victimizing the special needs kids with trying to influence autistic children to go trans. Then when you followed the speech by the Long Branch special education teacher who was complaining,
I heard
saying,
something
"Why
about it."
Yeah, I was wondering, like, why don't people trust me? I have a master's degree in special ed and specializing in queer theory, and I'm just trying to use my expertise to encourage these kids to go transgender. I'm like, what? Of course,
Biases here. No biases.
Yeah, no bias.
Yep,
No bias there.
In that. I'm objective.
Yeah, no objective. So that was interesting. What I found amazing during the first hour, and I think everyone can go there, it was kind of comical. When I walked into the room, I think they recognized me. They acted a little uncomfortable, and you can see throughout the meeting when I was there, like they're getting up, they're doing out-of-band communication, getting up, talking to one another, whispering information. But what I found shocking was they're asking a question like, "How do we write a strategy? What's a strategy?" Brian, you've written strategies before, right?
Well, first, before we talk about strategy, let's just think about this, right? It's supposed to be a public meeting.
It's supposed to be a public meeting.
Can you hear me? Yes, yeah, it's supposed to be a public meeting. So, if you're a public official at a public meeting, are you allowed to get up and text each other or whisper to each other and go out in the hallway and that kind of stuff because you see somebody who you'd rather not discuss things in front of? It seems a little bit problematic, right? I mean, that's pretty suspicious.
I would say it's very suspicious. In fact, throughout the meeting, they would get up and go to the coffee bar, walk outside the room several times. I mean, I saw Carl Frisch walk all the way into the back room on the phone during the day. It was just like, wow, it's supposed to be transparent. But there are one of these interesting questions, and Brian, feel free if you got questions for me, because I'm going to try to set you up there. Can you hear it? Can you hear me? You sound a little like. Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I can. I had another issue that was causing problems. I'm good.
Okay. So, all right. So it was interesting. They're saying like, well, what's a strategy? Like, how do we write a strategy? What are we supposed to do? And I'm just thinking, you've been in this position for 3 years and you don't understand that you're supposed to educate children? I mean, one would think that. And don't blame, I mean, I'm not making this up. You can actually go and take a look at the video that's posted on Board Docs right now. But they're going around for an hour discussing what is a strategy? How do we know what the children are supposed to need? And the funny thing is that even though when I'm there and they're having all these out-of-band communications, under the guise, and it's hilarious that they're talking about, well, how do we have community engagement and community participation? Like, for some reason, did they not pay attention to all of the participants at these school board meetings? All of these op-eds that are coming out in the paper that are giving them pointers like, we really care about academic performance. And they're just scratching their heads around like, I don't know, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, for 3 years, they're like, we should write like a strategic plan. I'm like, really? Like, now you're supposed to write a strategic plan. You're 3 years in, this is the last year of your tenure, now you want to write a plan. So even what's more asinine is that how do you think they're going to go about writing a strategic plan?
With SEL surveys?
SEL surveys, right? For those of us that have actually had professional success elsewhere, you write a strategic plan because, one, you understand what your mission is, what you're supposed to do, in this case being a school board. Then you write what's called a vision statement. You know, your 5 whys, your who, what, when, where, why, and when, and then you're supposed to put like your objectives and goals and then your milestones. Those are the things that make up a strategy. Nope, not this crew. And so they're just like, well, how do we do it? Well, let's have more surveys. Did you hear this, parents? More surveys. Those surveys that they don't want their kids to take home and they don't want you to see what they're asking your children. They want more of them. And it was
maximum participation.
Maximum participation. And literally, and I'm surprised, I am shocked they actually put this on Board Docs. They are literally scheming for that entire first hour how to maximize participation. It's already ridiculous. I think it's like 96%. But they're like, we need to have absolutely everyone participate so we know how to do a strategy. I mean, these are all the ones asking the really personal, intimate questions, everything under the sun. And then they have it by a rinky-dink type of vendor out in California. Oh, this is even interesting because they just came out with a new guidance for regarding, for those of you that are in IT security, for education space, they're recommending, the Department of Education is recommending that they follow the NIST cybersecurity framework. So this is literally in the space I live in. And you have to keep in mind, like, for when they collect all of this data, they don't have a data retention policy. They don't have a purpose specification. They don't use data minimalization, meaning collect only the data you need for a specific purpose. Again, no specific purpose. There is no data anonymization. They don't anonymize the data. They don't even have a data retention. And they certainly, as I saw, like, when they're sharing information pics about me, data sharing with third parties. And they want you to still collect more and suck more data in for a strategy, which doesn't make any sense. In fact, and by the way, they intend to use peer pressure, student body representatives, to exert peer pressure to get other children to participate in these surveys. They're going to say to them, and it's a lie, we need it because we don't know what we're doing, and we need you to tell us what to do. Asking students.
And don't they now, with the equity resource officers too, they can really get them to peddle those surveys too. You get the kids in there, peddling the surveys with the
and about 9:30
peddling surveys, and it's worse than that. But like, you think about it,
but
all the opt-out forms. Is it easy to opt out?
To me was,
I mean, Stephanie, you had an interesting scenario with this. No, it's not.
Oh, I had a very interesting experience with this.
Yeah. Stu, tell us your experience. Right? Did they actually think that? Did they allow you to withdraw consent? You had an interesting story.
It was really strange. They said they ended up saying it was a mistake. The email that we sent out to all the parents was a mistake. So, I was really upset because they sent out a survey saying, on this date, we're taking all the students out and we're giving them this survey. And if you just opted out with your counselor, that's not enough. You need to send in the written form. And if you haven't sent in the written form, the deadline to do that with the written form is on this day, and it was a date that had already passed. So then they were like, and same thing, you can also do the form online, and I think that the deadline was the same for that. But you can't sign your electronic signature online if you haven't already agreed to the student rights and responsibilities document or signed it. They don't allow you to sign anything digitally if you haven't signed for the SRNR, which I haven't because it's ridiculous.
Now let's just pause there, right? Because they're saying that digital signatures can't be accepted if you haven't signed on to the SRNR. That's the one saying you can't dead name students. That's the one that says,
yes.
Yeah, exactly. That completely infringes on First Amendment protections. And I think what's even worse is that now that they've moved away from the controversial policies issues, where they now will frame the conversations where your students will be allowed to explore material using only approved sources and make sure that they arrive to the approved conclusion. So they don't.
Well, now you're foreshadowing, because that's coming up.
Yeah, now
that's coming up.
Right. So because you don't sign a student rights and because you don't sign a document agreeing to student rights and responsibilities, they will not accept an electronic signature. So they put an additional burden in order for you to withdraw consent for them doing big data collection. And as I mentioned earlier,
this is
and a deadline.
But Harry, can't you just tell your student not to participate in the survey?
Well, hopefully, but yes. There have been instances where teachers have tried to tell students and exert authoritative pressure and say, you have to take it. Do you think that children are impressionable and will fill it out?
I mean, it's fair.
That's something I've asked about this too. I was told that the kids were. I was told that the kids were told it was optional, and actually the kids weren't told it was optional in one case. So I was like, you didn't ask for my permission, and the kids were told this was optional, and now the gender identity isn't part of the controversial thing that they have to notify parents about, apparently, under the federal law, whatever that one is, the federal protection for parents. But the gender identity question doesn't fall under that, so they don't have to get your permission, or they don't have to give you opt-out for that, but they tell the students it's optional, supposedly, but they didn't. So,
for those of us that think we're right wing, I think
gender identity questions do not fall under FERPA, the student privacy.
I don't. You know what? They don't give you notification in advance of the survey. So they, if you ask, hey, my kid just said that they took a survey today, they have to send it to you. So that's always the case. But you don't get opt-out rights beforehand, like they're about to take this survey. Because they administered 2 surveys in the first week of school that parents were not notified about, and that was the gender identity one.
Well, under FERPA, you're allowed to. Oh, absolutely violates FERPA. You necessarily can't go and see what data you've collected about a student throughout the period of time. I mean, if you should be able to do that. I mean, look at all the data that they released not last year, but in August they released it to Panorama without parental consent, and then they informed parents after the fact. I mean, absolutely, it'd be a FERPA violation. I mean, what records and what notes are you keeping about us? And also keep in mind, they're also doing studies for a biased incident reporting system. Now, I mean, what data are they collecting on students? I mean, for those of us that think we're right wing, I think we should be contacting Electronic Freedom Front, the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Frontier Foundation, because I mean, this is very serious. I mean, and the big data is big business, because it's not just selecting your likes; it's what they can infer about your child. These young impressionable minds, they can track them from kindergarten all the way through K and steer them in one certain mindset and worldview and one ideology. I mean, if you want your kids to be liberal, that's fine, but how liberal do you want them to be? Is there something too far? And not only that, but there's even discussion during the work session today about adding in an extra hour to the day, so having your kids there for even another hour. And this
Harry, I think they're introducing the Truthful Education thing right now.
Oh, let's talk about we should.
He's doing this before community participation. You might want to turn her up. This is very interesting.
An inclusive and culturally responsive school and work environments, and providing access and opportunity for all students to achieve and thrive. This resolution supports that work. This resolution also supports the work of the Controversial Issues Policy, which is currently under revision by the board. This resolution is meant to be a signal to our teachers, administrators, and staff who are engaging in the workforce that we recognize their challenges and they have our support. Our teachers are facing some very difficult conversations in classrooms with their students.
These are such nice words.
And they have shared with me, both teachers and administrators, that this would help them just to know that they have our public backing, because these conversations are tough. And I don't want to take anything away from our staff. Dr. Presidio and his team, they are working very hard to provide guidance to our teachers. But still, they are asking for us to publicly share that we are here for them.
Okay.
And that is the ask of this resolution. Last school board meeting, we read in the principal's
don't forget, this was also ghostwritten by one of the adults that was enticing children through the Pride Liberation Project to run away from home and be hidden from their parents. And it has absolutely actually, if you turn it down, I'd like to give a little background about this resolution, how it's disingenuous and how it doesn't really have any input or backing from the broad, wider community. It's given only on the only on the surface, a facade that it has wide support. I mentioned before, it has like the adults that were preying on kids in the Pride Liberation Project. It even has its mentions in, I know of this because in the Black community, they really view that Dr. Ricardo Anderson, as well as Karen Keys-Morra, has done nothing for the Black community. And they were actually invited to actually be a part of the Social Justice Committee at First Baptist, which is led by, Vernon Walton, who's the leader in the community, which they declined to do. And they instead opted for this. And they got this endorsed by the Fairfax NAACP, which again is 90% woke and white, and they only have like basically token leadership that runs the program that's pushing it. So this actually is coming from one demographic within the community and one ideology. So
it's an ultra left-wing group, Free and Anti-Racist Minds. It's called, Ultra. It's calling for using public schools to dismantle white supremacist dynamics. And I'm reading something from Mark Spooner's blog here. And he's, if you guys haven't had a chance to see it, it's fairfaxschoolsmonitor.com. And Mark explains that the group's calling for using public schools to dismantle white supremacist dynamics, which in its opinion includes capitalism. It advocates a transformative curriculum, including critical race theory, to achieve its goals. So that's the organization who wrote this. Yes.
And let's think about it. Other pillars of white supremacy, they would consider punctuality, individualism. They would consider this being able, being attractive. They would consider those to be elements of whiteness that they would want to rebalance.
Well, the nuclear family as well. They want to disband the nuclear family, as they call it, part of the patriarchy, right? And control.
Yes.
So they want government, school teachers to impart their values to your kids, and for you to have no ability to raise and control your kids.
Seems like
and to do it under a title. Yes, and they're doing it under a title that if you disagree with the policy that they're introducing, it's like truthful education, anti-racist. Like who wants to go against truthful education, and who wants to go against something called anti-racist? So it's kind of this thing where the left is brilliant at lining up, where if you disagree with anything we say, don't you dare, because you're a bigot and you're a racist and you're this and that and the other thing, even if it is disagreeable for several reasons. I mean, yes, it's very frustrating. So again, we're using language to just make it so that they're trying to make it so that you can't go against it. And they're also doing this before community participation. So they're offering it as a resolution. Like, why not listen to what a lot of the parents tonight want to speak about this, the controversial issues policy, which they're talking about, which is like to have teachers teach a controversial issue objectively without their own opinion. And they're offering this before community participation as a resolution. So they obviously don't care what people have to say. They're not listening to parents.
Well, the good thing is that, since our last board meeting, we are all about community participation. And we know that even in heavily Democratic areas, there are a lot of groups that do not agree with this, just what happened in Dearborn, Michigan. We were there for 6 hours, and if they were really about community participation, they would do what that school board in Dearborn, Michigan did, where they held a meeting solely for community participation, where they read aloud every letter, where they actually listened to every speaker. They had over 60 speakers. They were allowed to speak for 3 minutes. The camera was on them, but we know the school board will never do that, because that would be the end of their political agenda. They would know that there would be a swarm of community participants that would speak their mind about this. And this is the reason why they're limiting community participation. And that was even mentioned during the working session about limiting who could speak for a purpose. And not only that, but there's even discussion of what qualifies as a group. And Aurora mentioned, well, it's political. We got to limit to who we want to have in these rooms. Now, interestingly enough, they did mention that they're going to have Dr. Reed had mentioned that they had not picked the committees. And this is important. They said, well, the committees, they don't turn anyone away. Well, that's also important, because you have a lot of these activists that get on these committees. And their worldview, I think a lot of parents wouldn't agree with, particularly for the Family Life Education Committee, where they're trying to push a lot of these, a lot of crazy and radical ideas. And you don't want to, and they're trying to push sex at younger and younger ages on children. As a parent, I would say this is inappropriate. I mean, co-ed sex ed in 4th grade, that's crazy.
I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an amendment. Excuse me, point of order.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Point of order, please. We have to speak to the main. Others get to speak to the main motion.
No, if there's an amendment, we speak to the amendment first, and then we can vote on the amendment, and then we can.
Robert's rules. Robert's rules.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, Robert's rules.
The main motion. I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to amend the main motion by striking through the following language on the screen and inserting the following. Resolution of support for teachers and administrators regarding inclusive curriculum and instruction. Whereas Fairfax County Public Schools are committed to providing an academically rigorous education that promotes a responsive, caring, and inclusive culture where all feel valued, supported,
nothing about
and
academics at all.
Whereas
no, during their work session, during their strategy session, they mentioned nothing about academic excellence, nothing about academic
and respects the need for robust instruction.
Let's listen to the resolution.
Injustice. Whereas FCPS teachers, administrators, central office staff are developing curriculum and classroom resources along with incorporating more representative literature to strengthen student understanding of our complex national and global histories, where it is the role of the school board and the superintendent to support educators in carrying out FCPS expectations that all students will become critical thinkers and effective collaborators who respect the diverse perspectives, cultures, religions, ethnicities, abilities, sexual orientation, and gender identity of our community. Whereas FCPS's Controversial Issues Policy and Regulation, P3280, R3280, provide essential guidance and support for teachers and administrators as they engage students in more inclusive curriculum related to racism, bias, intolerance, and injustice. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board commits to protect and support teachers and administrators as they deliver FCPS-approved curriculum and classroom resources that are inclusive and meet the high aspirations of our students, families, and the Fairfax County community. I so move.
Is there a second?
Ms. Tolan? Ms. McLaughlin, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you.
How is this different than what they've already said? I mean, it's like we're going to support teachers indoctrinating the students of Fairfax County. But I wonder how this amendment differs at all from.
Without question,
They wanted to add this, like it's not just anti-racist. We want to make it inclusive of every single thing. Like, is this?
As they develop
No, they're removing the anti-racist terms, and they're just saying, hey, we want to have high standards.
All the things. Okay, I see.
Yeah, I think the anti-racist, the race shaming, I think is going to be only create and sow division within the community. I mean, you have hardworking individuals that they assume that you're not hardworking because you're a person of color.
After extensive board engagement to find common ground, I, along with Ms. Tolan, are now presenting this alternative language. It is our humble goal that regardless of the vote tonight,
we still got. I still have a lot more to say about that work session. Boy, that
our
was something.
employees, our families, and our community understand how deeply committed we are to ensuring that Fairfax County
To indoctrinating. I thought she was going to say
demonstrates its
indoctrinating.
commitment
That would
to
have been.
inclusive
Exactly.
classrooms
They're going
and
to.
instruction. Without question,
And they're
as someone
collecting all
who has
this
a
data on
bachelor's
these
in
kids to
American
make sure that
history,
they're effective.
I am painfully aware of my own public education
Kids gonna get pulled
and
off to
even
the
my
side for
children's
thought crime.
education. It has
Inside the
not been
hallway.
broad. It has not been diverse.
So
it has
the word
not addressed
inclusivity
historic
right
and
now
systemic injustice.
is like that's what they're
It has
using to
not
mask
brought the
indoctrination.
diverse
It's
narratives
like they're
and
not. We're not going
voices
to talk
to the
about
table.
academics, and we haven't for the last few years. But
I
we're going to use the
know,
word inclusivity,
as many of us who care
which means
passionately about this,
indoctrination,
that it
which
is
means
not
they're not
a
being
local
inclusive
issue.
of certain
It's not even a
perspectives.
state
So
issue.
there's
At the national level, we
this
are
is-
all trying to find
if you're
a way
politically
I had
conservative,
to come
forget it. We're
together
not inclusive
and
of your
demonstrate
view.
our shared
Not you.
commitment to being a better
Oh.
world. And so
this
while I
happens
know
whenever you
that
have
this
like
has
two of the
been
extremes. I think I shared
unfortunately
with.
difficult as we try
I
to
don't know if I
find
shared
common
this with you, but I
ground
used to be
to
a teacher
come
of
to
military
language that we
leadership,
could
and
all
ethics
say with
over at Ashford
conviction
University.
that this
And there was
is
a very,
how we
very
best
ultra-right
communicate out
professor that
to
wanted
our,
me to teach
our
military
families and our
leadership.
employees that
And
we
he
are
only talked about
unified
like Robert E.
in
Lee and Chesty Puller in the most glowing light. And I'm just like, hold on a second. This is like a college level. Like I was pointing out their flaws, and like they didn't like it, and they ended up axing me for it because I'm like, you have to. You can't go to one extreme or the other and then say, "Oh yeah, it's
Tolan, would you
critical
like to speak
thinking."
to your second?
And call it critical thinking. That's the
They call
funny
it
thing
critical
too is they're
thinking.
calling
Yeah.
they have it called critical thinking in here.
I, of course, believe in the power
We're
of
going to tell you what to
public
think, and
education
we're going to
for
call it critical
all
thinking.
students, and have dedicated years of my career to support students, teachers, and other staff to provide the best, most academically rich and challenging experience for
And also,
any
if you're a
student,
politically conservative
no matter
teacher
the
and you don't
difficulties
think
they may
that
be
males belong in
experiencing
female
or their need
bathrooms,
for
and you say
enrichment.
it, how
I
dare
believe
you?
my
They're not
record
supportive
and
of you.
current
That's not an
actions out in my
opinion that
schools and in my
they're
community
okay
convey
with.
my support for
How
educators.
dare you?
But I understand that our teachers and staff may
This
want
is
a
sad
clear
because, like, I've
statement
had conservative
that we
teachers, I've
support
had
the
liberal
work they are
teachers
doing to
that
implement
pushed and challenged me, but
FCPS-approved curriculum.
even if I didn't agree with them,
And
I still had to
happy to
defend
do
my
that
viewpoint.
in
and I
a
wasn't
way
penalized
that gets
for
the
it. And this
message
is clearly
across,
penalizing viewpoint.
but does not
This is clearly
alienate
encouraging
any
viewpoint
subset of our
discrimination.
FCPS community. I also want to
What are
thank
the
Dr.
next one?
Anderson and the constituents she has worked with to bring this to our attention and to
was
start
that,
our
Brian?
work on this.
Why
Prior
do
to
they still wear
tonight, I've
masks?
also had conversations with other community groups and have gotten many emails on this topic. I use this additional
Are they not
information
that way,
to
right?
Signaling,
lend some
like
ideas
virtual
to this latest
or virtue
draft.
signaling.
Yeah, I know.
The
It's
substitution
The
that
martyrs.
we're
she probably
presenting
wears a
is,
mask.
I
She probably
believe,
wears a
more
mask while she's in
inclusive
her
of our
car by
board
herself
member
too.
views
It's kind of
and
like
less
that type,
divisive for our broad
How else
community.
can people know you're a good person
We
if you're
tried to be
not
sure
in a
that there
car
were
by
no
You're not
yourself
wearing a
with
mask.
misunderstandings regarding
So,
anti-Semitism
Well, good
will they
news
know?
that
or
she's not
any
running
other
again,
type of
right?
hatred.
So
yeah.
If the purpose of what we're doing tonight is to signal to our educators that the board supports the work that they are doing to implement FCPS approved curriculum,
Behind
teachers
you.
are
Ms.
leaving.
Marin?
Except when we disagree with you. If we disagree with
The
your
Truthful Education
perspective, get out.
resolution, as proposed, will be a statement against
900
racism and bias
left
for instruction and
after
learning
last year.
conditions at
Not because of the
FCPS.
Yeah.
The proposed resolution, as
teachers didn't
originally
need a new
proposed, will show the
resolution.
school board's
The
unwavering
900
support of our
that left,
educators,
they
who have
would've
asked for this
still,
resolution to
the
affirm their
resolution
curriculum-based
doesn't help.
instruction of truthful and accurate history that often is
This is the
complex
best
and
time.
uncomfortable, and yet we cannot shy
This
away
school board
from the
member
responsibility of the school
planned
system
on
to
not even
educate
being
students
there for the
for a
full
world that is diverse
work
in
session.
perspectives,
She
religions,
planned on leaving at 3:45. It was clearly scheduled to end at 4. And she has a history of leaving school board meetings early all the time. If we're going to elect an official, we vow that we will actually be there to do the job. And just in that work session that we were at, I said they were supposed to cover the strategy session, they were supposed to cover adult education, career and technical, and special needs. Guess what was scheduled last? Special needs. Guess what didn't get addressed? Special needs. Guess where the greatest need is? Special needs. And who wasn't there? I present to you our school board.
I've enjoyed working with the main resolution sponsor,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson, who has approached this work with collaboration, transparency.
Well, even when they did we talked about it a little bit last time when they had the report on that. They were like, they didn't look at learning loss. They were like, we're just not going to look at how this impacted everybody when we, especially people with IEPs, when we shut down the schools. We're just going to delete it. We're going to pretend that didn't happen. So, and then I guess when they're supposed to talk about it at the work session, they just choose to not talk about it at all.
Or how a lot of students and who are in special needs aren't able to engage and take electives because they pull them out and they put them in occupational therapy and incentivizing students to fail their classes so they can maintain those services until they're 25 years old. Denying them, first of all, by taking them out of electives, learning how to do trace so they're self-sufficient. So, I mean, this is a routine problem that they are having within the special needs community. Not only that, but they create bureaucratic hurdles to even obtaining an IEP.
Since I did fail earlier to share a few things, I'd like to do that now and then speak.
And now we know that they're preying upon autistic children. I think Stephanie, you had some data where they're preying on children who are autistic to assert themselves as transgender.
I'm not sure if they're preying on them, but they're more likely to do that. I was just reading an article today which said that statistically, I don't have the article up in front of me right now, but statistically in that population, they're much more likely to become fixated on things. And a lot of people think that with all of the discussion on gender, that person, right? Like, it's kind of like, wait a minute, like, hold on just a second. Yeah, it's an odd question. Why don't you trust me?
Oh, speaking of fascism, I mean, what if everyone keep catching the news? Delegate Guzman's proposed legislation.
Oh yes, that was very interesting. Criminalizing the parents. That's another for those of you who are not aware, Delegate Guzman decided to say that if you do not affirm your child's gender, she just had an interview on recently on the news about it. If you don't affirm your child's gender, she wants to introduce a policy where you can be charged with a misdemeanor or a felony, and CPS will be involved in your life and Child Protective Services, and there will be this investigation which might affect your education or your work. And she's a former social worker, I guess, and she was really gung-ho about that. And even I think the Democratic leadership separated themselves from her very quickly. They distanced themselves from her with good reason. But yeah, that was just this week. This past week, right? That was Friday.
By our favorite anchor. Well, at least he decides to fairly bash both sides. So, or he just hates politicians in general. So, but
who knows?
Who knows?
But it was an interesting story, that one.
It was very interesting.
And then she did claim you misrepresented my viewpoint, which was interesting.
All I can say.
No, I don't think we did.
I don't think she clarified. I don't think she clarified how it was.
Yeah, she said it could be a misdemeanor or a felony, and you could lose your job and your livelihood if you don't affirm it.
That seems pretty
and
clear.
By the way, words matter because like queer theory, define queer. That's important. It's not just LGB. It's not. There's a part includes what
like 80% of us sitting in the middle are like, what did she just say? And then there's a very unusual contingent, very, very strange contingent of people who support that.
A format usually used as a
hey, support. Corbett Sanders, Miss, keep West Springfield High School white. Corbett Sanders, right? Her mask is off.
That's the one.
That's the redistricting champion to keep West Springfield High School white. She took her mask off.
Either through the introduction
keep it white, keep Sandberg and Whitman separated.
On many of the points
create that pocket of poverty.
The strange redistricting. But she doesn't have a mask on today.
There are three mechanisms for doing that. Either through the introduction of a forum topic.
Well, I think one of the questions I had for the community speakers last time was, okay, if you can speak out in terms of, women's rights or, male rights, right? Or you could speak out and say, hey, I'm homosexual and that stuff. All of those, you have a sexual orientation. Child is growing up, they're, developing their sexual identity, right? But if you're non-binary, or basically asexual, and you don't really identify as a male or a female, right? Then a lot of these issues are almost not applicable, right? It's you obviously haven't critical thinking if you're saying you're obsessed with your sexuality, yet you're non-binary, when you don't identify as either a male or a female, right? So it's the pushing by the schools of particularly the kids to identify as just some unique random thing to get attention or to become obsessed with, rather than focusing on extracurriculars, rather than focusing on academics, just demonstrates this board is not interested in educating kids. They're simply interested in dividing and indoctrinating on these woke political moves.
No, they haven't focused on anything academic related. Nothing. I haven't heard anything talking about SOL scores. I've heard about nothing about like graduation rates. I heard when they talked about like adult education, I heard that Melanie Marion said, is this our space? Do we care about adults? I'm like, oh yeah, great. So you don't educate them and then you make them adults and like, whoop, we're done. Whew, I'm done with that one. They did talk about like with career and technical education, but they didn't really talk about, they're just like, well, some of these classes aren't accessible. We should think about it. I'm like, you've had 3 years to think about these problems, right? There's a demand for trades, for trade education, for career and technical education in this county. We should create a trade school. One of these high schools could be turned into a trade school. It can be centrally located. Not everybody wants to, and they constantly, even in the discussion of CTE, it went right back to the assumption that everyone's going to go to college. With undergrad prices being astronomical and having a low return on investment, some people are deciding maybe I don't want to do this, and they're not providing those opportunities. They're not listening to the community.
Harry, there's no career and technical school.
No,
in
Fairfax
County. What?
No, there's not. No,
that's madness.
Yeah, they have no dedicated. They do not have a dedicated trade school. They need one.
Wow.
And Sam, there is one in Loudon. It's called NADA, which is the I think the trade's in there. I have to go back and look, right? Monroe Academy of maybe trade academics or something. But check the nonsense that it's done. So number one, it's oversubscribed. So, have you ever heard like, I wanted to take English, but they didn't have room in the class for me, right? They literally, like, these kids want to get a useful course, but they said, no, we don't have any room at the end for you. And then second, when they do a lottery, when they choose it, one of the main criteria for selecting who goes to trade school, right, which is, hey, I'm not going to be on a college academic class, is your SOL scores. So you're going to prioritize kids who get the top SOL scores when you're choosing a trade. Only government bureaucrats, right? Government teachers to come up with this nonsense, right?
I did really great.
They're like, you're the most likely to go to college, so you get the first seat in trade school.
You get the first seat in trade.
99th percentile kids. Okay, here you go.
Now think about this. Like, doesn't your doctor's handwriting isn't like horrible? Like, I'm the same way. I have a horrible precision grip. You do not want me to assemble your furniture or to do anything with my hands, like, other than behind a keyboard. Like, it doesn't make any sense. If you're going to be like a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, I mean, this is, and they admitted to that even during in the afternoon session, and it was just disappointing. Like, especially when they knew they had to talk about special needs and the part of their strategic planning, and they completely just skipped over it today. Didn't even address it. I mean, they put it in the very end of the agenda, and then they put a hard stop. I mean, that is just wrong. I'm sorry. As a public official, you should actually, we're going to get here. We're going to be here through the entire time. They could have spent an extra 2 hours. And if one school board member could have done that, you could switch it to make it virtual.
I don't mean to interrupt you. Arora is talking about the anti-racism stuff.
Oh, great. She makes a lot of sense.
The term anti-racist is really an offshoot of this bigger idea of anti-bias, right? That we want to create a place where everyone is included and valued without prejudice or discrimination. It's rooted in something bigger, an idea that we're trying to build a society that's supposed to be inclusive of everyone. And there are things we're going to disagree on, we've disagreed on till the beginning of time, and we'll continue to till the end, from a very deep philosophical level. And we have to accept that that's okay. But the reality is, to prepare our kids for the 21st century, we need to set up a system that's able to recognize its wrongs, but not only that, that's able to have conversations around all of these things.
Like what we need to prepare kids for the 21st century,
which requires
the woman who lives at her
presentation
parents'
of the various
house.
narratives
Like,
that we can't even agree on as a board.
We're preparing for the
and
future.
I certainly ran out of time. I don't know if we're going to have go-backs, but
it's amazing when you watch these school sessions. It is very clear that
just as a reminder, we're speaking to the amendment. At this point, we'll have a chance to speak to the motion.
Where is the perfect example of how you can go to college, waste money, and come out worse? She was sent to Yale and comes out and has no discernible skills whatsoever. Lives in her parents' basement and talks gibberish.
I just want to say
right?
I am beyond grateful to be able to publicly support our amazing teachers and administrators.
Every kid to college.
To be totally candid, this amendment isn't perfect. The resolution wasn't perfect.
Yeah,
the resolution's not perfect. That's true.
And then they still pass it. This is just like TJ. This is a bad system. We're going to pass it.
Which doesn't
ever make SRNR too. We disagree with all of this. Let's pass it.
But we all do share.
Let's actually go to leaders. What they're talking about. And these work sessions show that they run the show, and they know what they're doing is bad. They're like, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. Just
to feel seen.
You just can't leave it alone. No, tinker.
So while this isn't perfect, I've always been taught not to lose the good for the perfect.
Anti-racist.
It's the role of the board and the superintendent to empower our educators to carry out the clear educational expectations of our portrait of a graduate, that our students become critical thinkers and effective collaborators who acknowledge and understand diverse perspectives, religions,
let's go over some of the quotes of Henry Rogers about anti-racist, right? Henry Rogers says, the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. So in other words, you have to discriminate by race right now, or you're a racist. He says the only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So not only are you have to discriminate right now, forever and evermore, you're going to discriminate against kids by That's what this anti-racist movement says. That's their dicta. Let's take it a little further, right? He said you can't be neutral, right? That if you allow any unequal outcomes, right? In other words, if for example, maybe more blacks are playing in the NFL, or maybe more wealth is accumulated by Asians, if you allow that to persist in any way whatsoever, you are a racist, period. Shut up, you're a racist. The quote is, one either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist, or you constantly confront racial inequities as an anti-racist. So what they're saying that if you don't accept that maybe the Asian, came over here and as a group focus on education and work hard and have an average income higher. If you don't accept that there's any other definition or explanation for why Asians have a higher equity, you are a racist and you needed to be shouted down for more. That's what they're passing here, right? Just so everybody understand what they're passing. Either they're stupid and they have no idea what they're talking about, right? Or more likely they do understand and they want to say, we want to target our enemies, that if you don't agree with this, our Marxist agenda, our official curriculum is going to say you're a racist and you'll be shouted down.
Biased incident reporting.
Biased incident reporting. They ignore completely all cultural factors. I mean, the Asian markets are the only markets I've ever been to where I've seen, like, Kodak test prep books. But you're right, like in sports. This is going to come to sports as well, people. I remember seeing proposals where there's serious discussion, minimal playing time, no cuts at the varsity level. Varsity.
Let me make one more quote. Historically, we believe that, hey, if I think one group is superior to another, right? That all people from this group or race are smarter or superior in this skill. That is historically what racism is, being biological differences, right? And his quote is, and then it's kind of morphed a little bit into, hey, if I just don't like people or treat people differently, right, then oftentimes that's called a racist. Technically, the original term racist, and you should make up new terms if you change the definition. But the term was biological differences. Another is, kind of if you're bigoted, you can be a racist if you treat one group differently. But Henry Rogers has come to the conclusion that if you believe that treating people differently or beliefs, if you think that's what causes racism, you are actually a racist, right? The only way to be not a racist is to believe that all racial differences are caused by policy and people in power, and we must change our government until all equal outcomes are different. If you don't agree with him, you're a racist. And that's what Omar and the rest of these clowns are pushing.
And and the impacts where they want to go do away with advanced education opportunities for all children. I mean, and in the name of equity, they would literally want to de facto privatize advanced education. So they're creating inequity.
We will pay. I personally, I will pay $1,000 to any of these school board members who can come on and have an hour-long debate, publicized debate, about this policy, because they're either too stupid or they'll get frustrated. When people are unwilling even just have a rational discussion with other people about their policy, that it's the emperor with no clothes.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the group who didn't they say that Asians were the problem? Aren't they on record saying that, like during the TJ admissions? Like they're actually stating that one group is the problem. Like, I don't know if we're supporting anti-racism policies. But I suppose like it's racist for me to think that that's problematic because it's so clear to them that that's the case. I guess like that's what we're passing
they use
right
the terminology of overrepresented.
Oh,
overrepresented.
Right. Okay.
Oh my God! Could you believe that we are living? It's happened in 2020, and then you would say that about a group. Oh, they're overrepresented. Yeah, I mean, they're using objective criteria. That
is. You guys are working too hard. They're saying that you're working too hard. You're studying too much. Yeah, that's quite.
Yeah, we have to lower. They've already looked. What?
So they're talking about a resolution right now, and they haven't listened to community participation about it, as we pointed out. And this is controversial. They're trying to, and you can see it's controversial because even with the amendment, you can see them disagreeing with each other. So even among them, and they're all the way to the left on the political spectrum. They were all endorsed by the Democratic Party, and they're known to be to the left. They're even arguing amongst themselves about it. So it's not just a resolution, which seems like, not to let's. Well, you would think honoring victims of 9/11 would not be controversial, but Omesh objected to that. But anyways, so you would think like it's a resolution. It shouldn't be so controversial. And they're debating and debating and debating. It's been going on for an hour and 20 minutes now. And so if you look at there was a great parent who broke down how much they talk about each topics over the last couple of years. Do you have that?
Do you have that
yes.
graphic?
And
it's in the share.
And the thing that they discuss the most are resolutions.
I had sent you an email hours ago that I needed you to approve me to get into that share.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me double check. All right. I'll.
I had to. But that little infographic is just access. Fantastic.
I never got it, but I'm going to send it to your other emails. Okay.
Well, I've got like 19 emails, so we'll just.
All right.
And whichever person did that, thank you for doing that.
SamAtero.com. Send it there, please. Right, I got it, but when I tried to log in, it said all
right, I'm on right now. All right.
And then I can pull it up. So Stephanie, when he sends that to me, what am I looking for in the folder?
I'll just email it to you right now.
Okay. So it's an infographic of how much time they dedicate spending, how many minutes in these meetings they spend talking about each thing, and it's broken down, and you can kind of see what their priorities are. And I think the biggest one is it's resolutions, but usually what they do for resolutions is not debate. It's they all raise their hands and say, I'm a, 5th generation immigrant. We're honoring immigrants. This is really important to me. They cry a little bit. They pat each other on the back for for also being concerned about that topic. And so they spend a lot of time on platitudes. That's the number one thing. And then they have to, whatever group they're talking about, they have to have their picture taken with them.
Yeah. That's exactly what's going on with this.
And we came to understand.
They're not debating this. They're doing what you just said.
There are many blockers to that learning.
Just send it to you.
So the anti-bias movement was born in the late 1900s.
Oh, I think they're still
that being that, the National Education Association across the country last year, #TeachTruth, led a movement.
And
we know our educators see this because they're the closest to our kids and understand their needs. And so it's an imperative on us to support anti-bias work and therefore anti-racist work as a part of our educational mission.
She's talking about how the educators are the closest to our kids,
even though I understand it's been signaled and misunderstood otherwise.
I know.
And the final piece is, I know it's not even a part of the current resolution, but liberatory was removed from this language, and that was a piece I felt very strongly to keep.
Why?
Pardon me?
That's ageism, Stephanie. Cool your jets.
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Experience matters. We can go with ageism here, okay? If you're like literally like just out of school,
funny, wasn't
it? Yeah, it was really funny.
Good one.
Completely in every space that we
occupy.
Especially in the
yeah, I don't have any. I still don't have any email from you, brother.
To forge a path forward.
Dude,
I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm looking right at my email.
From faith community.
All right, I'm going to download it. I'm going to send it to you.
Holocaust to find redemption and renewal, where Christian theology stood for the oppressed, Hindu and Buddhist ideology, liberation ideology.
Ms. Amash, your time is
found a place for self-actualization.
Ms. Amash, your time is up.
They're shutting her up.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to download this, Sam, and send it to you.
Okay. What was she going
Remember, every time she talks about liberation ideology, that is pure Marxism. All of the Marxist groups are termed with liberation ideology, to liberate you from the nuclear family, to liberate you from capitalism, to liberate you from normal rational government.
Sam, I'm saying to your Red Sea account. Info@RedSea?
Sure.
All right.
And now we have an amendment that appeared this morning. At least that's when I saw it.
Sending it again.
And it's my understanding that some people on this board had an opportunity.
You turn it down a little bit. So we can. They're just going to continue to waste time. So it is just amazing when they talk about, when you look at the meeting, and maybe it's because I had an impact because they really like shifted around their seats when I got there, but they clearly like busted through their scheduled time. They missed an entire section. And, and literally I left. I deliberately came back a little bit later after lunch, and it was like Porky Pig. This, like when I walked in again, like seeing like the stuttering. And, it's just funny. Like they talk about like not educating adults. And then later on, you're looking at the career and technical education, and, they're just like, well, we don't know what to do. Let's put some thought behind this. 3 years in, and they still have no idea how to do their job. You can normally give somebody grace, if it takes about a year to do your job really well, and then you end up moving something else. But this is 3 years. 3 years and nothing has happened, And now they're spending their entire year planning on, well, this is what we plan to do. We couldn't do anything in 3 years. In fact, things went worse, went in the downward direction. There's more division. We're not talking about academics. We're talking about how does everyone feel in the classroom environment. That is literally what they talked about for the first hour.
So now they're going to debate a resolution for an hour and 20 minutes.
All right, Sam, did you get the email?
Yeah, I got it. Give me a second.
All right.
There's different types of jobs, right? So if I'm in a company, I can be actually, a worker bee implementing that. So for like a school system, you would be the teacher teaching it. I may be good at that, maybe bad, maybe inexperienced, but there's, part of that. Then there's being a manager. How do I manage the school? When an issue comes up, how do I diffuse it? How do I, move people in the right direction? And there's often management. People focus a lot of those on a scandal. And then there's governance. Governance is, hey, how do I, going to win this war? I'm not planning a, individual ship or an individual battle. I have to move big levers. I have to define the mission, Harry, as you said, define, the strategic goals. Hey, how do I verify the administrators are doing what our policies are? Congress has oversight meetings, right? And how do you do that? Virtually none of the candidates who run for any of these positions even know what governance is. They have no idea of the structures of how to do it, nor the processes about which you do it. The strategic plan is the number one part of governing. They haven't even looked at it in 3 years. Every single one of these people should be voted out. If you vote for these people who have basically admitted they have no idea how to govern, then that's really a reflection on you. Every single one of these people.
Well, Brian, let's illustrate that with some absolute cold, hard facts. So here is the graph that Stephanie was alluding to. And you guys want to walk us through what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So this was an infographic that the Fairfax County Parents Association put out. They actually spent the time documenting how much time they actually spend during the school board meetings discussing matters of importance. And notice the disproportional representation of resolutions and recognitions. Just as we're going through now, it's an hour and 26. They're still discussing it. And notice up in the top how little they talk about. Nothing about advanced academics, nothing about learning loss, minimal discussion about special education or academics. In fact, it's less than, combined less than 5% of their time. Remember, what is the job of a school board? What is the job of a school? I'll leave that open. And yet they're discussing that they don't understand even what a strategy is. This is what they voted. Oh, and for good measure, just keep in mind your property taxes, what you're spending for your property tax for your vehicle that doubled this year. Your property taxes keep going up and up. During the work session, they say, guess we have to recognize that we're never going to have enough money to do what we need to do. And remember, there hasn't been an audit in Fairfax County Public Schools for decades. Where's all of this money going?
Property taxes just went up 8%. 8% on top of the valuation of your house and your car going up. So we bought a vehicle back in 2018, and our vehicle was valued this year at what we purchased it for in 2018. So the valuation is tricky, right? Because 4 years later, so the valuation of your vehicle and your house has gone up substantially, but the rate has also increased a lot. Maybe somebody should tell Omish about this, because I'm not sure if she pays for her own bills, but these are the taxes that you have to pay, which go into the budget. I don't know that she concerns herself a lot with that, but when
half of the property tax goes to paying for our schools. Oh, and let's not forget, in the previous, they have no idea what to spend those ESSER funds for. The ESSER funds were to deal with learning loss. That went directly towards paying for social emotional learning. That's not academically related. That is dealing with how they can find to data mine your children, so they can shape them, and they don't care. They already admitted in that school program they don't care about their education as an adult, or even if they leave the school system coming back in, they feel like that's not even their space.
ESSER spending, Harry, ESSER spending was less than 5% of the total minutes spent during 2021-2022.
Jeez. And that funding is going to go away. And they're talking about, they're concerned about the ESSER cliff. How they're going to justify spending for more social emotional learning, for more social emotional learning, more data mining of their kids. I mean, this school board has simply used their position and influence a reasonable person would assume, to simply just to influence the next generation of kids coming through the K through 12 to be voters for their political party. And literally
Harry,
that's what they've done.
I'm going to put that in perspective. Look at this. If these numbers be true, there were 3,200 minutes in this amount of time viewed, right? And I just did the very basic math because I can do that. 3,200 at about 4% of 3,200 is 128 minutes. So they spent approximately 128 minutes out of the full year, just 2 hours discussing such an important matter out of the entire year.
Yeah, and now they're trying to think, well, what are we going to do for this next year? I mean, they're trying to put together their campaign strategy to get reelected. They're not educating our kids. I mean, seriously, folks. I mean, Fairfax is what, 60% Democrat anyway? He's like, it's not going to change. People move here for a reason. They didn't need to worry about losing their political sway. They just wanted to move the party further to the left. And that's what they're using the K through 12 pipeline to do it.
You know, if I can just add one thing, we were talking about the social emotional learning. I just want to read a couple of questions that are on the screener, the initial one that they took grades 3 through 12. And they're saying they're trying to look at, like, you hear social emotional learning and you think like the well-being of children. So that also sounds, it just sounds innocuous, right? I mean, it's like as if they want the best, they're interested in what's best for your children. But one of these questions is, how often do you think about what someone of a different race, ethnicity, or culture experiences? Almost never, once in a while, sometimes frequently, almost always. Now, that's one of those mind your own business questions, right? Like, what I don't understand, how is that for the well-being of your child? Why would they need to know that? And there's another one, like, how confident are you that students at your school can have honest conversations with each other about race? Like, well, can somebody talk to me about math? What happened with advanced math? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you guys just stay in your lane, teach academics? Like, the SOL scores have dropped so substantially. The learning loss has been so significant over the pandemic, which they won't talk about today. They never talk about it. So anyways, that's 2 examples.
No, I agree. We're not in the era of massive resistance. We're not. This is not the civil rights era. I mean, we've evolved as a society, and they're just looking to de-evolve society. You're absolutely right. There's absolutely no reason to ask those questions to be a focal point during the academic day. And if you have those type of incidents, there's clearly a precedent in history on how to deal with it appropriately. It wasn't a problem until they made it a problem. That's the issue.
Yeah, they just constantly get people to focus on, hey, what race is he or she, or I guess it now.
For us is the amended motion.
You have to determine whether is this person
and Ms. Tolan
100%, 50%, 2%? Is this person like 5% of 4 different races? Like, how do they think about all this intersectionality?
Now you're dealing with some.
I appreciate the chair trying.
You're dealing with real sensitive issues there, because now you're going to dealing with like colorism. Are you black enough? Are you Hispanic enough? Are you Asian enough? I mean, now they're really getting into.
My understanding from a parliamentarian is that
this should be an outrage. Can you imagine if they did this in Europe? I mean,
is that correct?
I'll send you some of these issues.
That's been my recommendation to this board, that to preserve the impartiality of the chair, if the chair really needs to speak, it's best to wait until after the vote, just so that the chair is impartial.
Oh, now they got the
Great,
parliamentarian.
thank you for
speaking. He was
clarifying.
the parliamentarian over for the
My
Virginia
preference would be to speak
PTA,
before
who's
the vote.
coaching.
So now I will call on board members who wish to speak to the main motion as amended for Ms. McLaughlin and Ms. Tolan's motion. So
Thomas Jefferson,
I will ask Ms.
without cause.
McLaughlin, as the maker of this motion, if you wish to speak first.
All I can say is that for the public and for our employees, I want you all to know that this is reflective of the fact that at a local level, at a state level, and a national level, our nation is struggling to come together. And the entire goal of this resolution was how we as a board could come together. And there were
you don't listen to
many
parents
board members
because
that
you
were
did this before you had
original
any kind of
language
community
that was brought
participation.
forward by Dr. Anderson.
You're tearing our district apart.
But we weren't there.
Academic standards are worse than when you took office.
Vote of support. And so this alternate language was simply that, to make sure that we didn't leave tonight with nothing.
The simple language.
It breaks my heart.
The simple language. It's so simple. An hour and a half later.
That we have trouble.
They literally, as a school board, had to do almost nothing.
Not true. I spent hours talking with Dr.
It was a great school district.
Hold on, listen to this. Listen to this.
On why she felt the original language, or even some of the amended language, should stay where it was. And so all I want to do is hopefully model that when individual board members raise questions about our commitment to transparency to one another and transparency to the public, I'm just doing my best to make sure that the public understands the hard work we were doing behind the scenes, our goal to bring this to you as soon as we could, to have it publicly published as soon as we could.
Transparency, whispering around here.
The amended language that Dr. Anderson sent us last night, I thought we were going to see that publicly this morning, published just like mine.
Let's talk about transparency too.
And so all I can say is that in the end, I hope that we can heal and move forward and do what we intend to do, which is help educate kids to the best we can.
Ms. Tolan,
when was that ever the goal? I'm gonna no. You're not educating kids.
No, they're not educating
That's false.
Just take a deep breath.
Okay.
We are all here tonight hoping for a school where all of our students are welcome and all of our students feel safe.
Transparency in a second. This is so they're working on a collective bargaining agreement, and this board with the teachers unions, they're just like this, and that had a lot to do with the school closures, right? So they're working out this collective bargaining agreement, and so Mark Spooner from the Fairfax Schools Monitor asked them. He wanted some transparency, because he said, we don't just want it to be that you guys you've already agreed to something and then you put it up in front of yourselves and then you vote on it. Like, we would like to see before that happens. We want to be part of the process. And so he ended up having to FOIA what's happening in the negotiations between the board and the teachers unions for this collective bargaining thing that they're working on. And so he FOIA'd it, and they said, there's 6,000 pages, so if you'd like them, you have to pay us, it's almost $4,000, $3,850 to have access to those pages. Now they're up there talking about transparency, right? Like, we're the public, we want to know what's happening. Nobody's summarizing it for us. Just for one example, the collective bargaining agreement between the teachers unions and the board. And then they're like, well, we would love to tell you that, but it's going to cost you $4,000.
Ms. Tolan?
I mean, and that's the case for a lot of, when you FOIA something from them, that's the case a lot of the time. So it's always hilarious when they talk about transparency.
Ms. Marin, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
You're absolutely right. They do not bring it before the entire board. And
all those opposed?
Yeah, you're right. $4,000 just to get the documents. That's absurd.
That motion.
I mean, that is absolutely absurd. And they're still voting. Oh, now they called it. An hour and 38 minutes in.
So did they pass the resolution, or was that for some other amendment?
Okay.
Interesting.
Did the First Amendment pass?
For the vote. The motion before us is on the screen. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Oh, there you go, boy.
That is Ms. Tolan, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, Ms. Jarnock-Kofax.
Now this is on the amendment, right? To be like more inclusive with the language and not just call it anti-racism. Is that what they're?
Yeah.
That's what they're debating, right? Okay. So now we just settled on the amendment. I think it passed.
They just lead the nation in dysfunction.
Oh wait,
we lead the way.
Hold on.
Fairfax,
The question was called.
But you misrecorded my vote. Things can be imperfect.
Ms. Amish.
But
Ms. Amish, what is your vote?
We need a Teach Truth resolution. So I voted in favor of that, because otherwise we have no resolution.
Okay, so I will call.
I rejected the amendment because we should have bolder language, but the alternative is to have nothing. So I'm voting for this.
All right, so I will call for the vote again, Ms. Amish. All those in favor, please raise your hand. of the main motion as amended called the Resolution of Support for Teachers and Administrators Regarding Inclusive Curriculum. Ms. Omesh, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, Ms. Jernick Kofax, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, and myself. All those opposed? Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Marin, Ms. Dr. Anderson. That motion passes. She's here for this, but I would like to invite all those in support of this resolution to please join the board at the dais for photo. Without objection, I will ask my colleagues if we can skip this photo.
I have an
Thank
idea.
you.
Let's modify. No!
Hold on. I will like to invite all those in support of the National School Bus Safety Week recognition.
Harry, they're skipping the photo.
They're skipping a photo. Oh,
you missed that. She said, "I would like to ask my colleagues that we skip this photo."
That is fine. That is fine. We have an objection, so I will call all those in favor of this resolution to come up for photo.
Oh, now they're bringing it back up. Oh my God.
Now they're going to have a photo together.
Wait a minute. No, that's a straight up rebellion. That's what we're seeing right here. These rebels. We will have our photo. We will have our photo op.
Is this not authoritarian? I mean, this is like...
We need more photos.
More photos. They are an hour and 40 minutes in.
She said she asked them to skip the photo and tried to move on to the next item, and they...
No, we're not going to talk about business.
They're like, no.
What business? No. What would we do?
We need our picture.
Why would they want to listen to community participation? That's next. They don't.
Is that next?
They don't matter. They don't matter.
They've got one more resolution that they need to pass apparently, and then I think after that is community participation.
Hey, they look at like, hey, you're not going to vote for somebody else other than us. We're just going to tell you what you believe.
Do you think this is painful if they have to act like they like each other and they were just arguing? And are the ones who voted against it in the picture? Like, the ones
Thank you. I don't believe we have. Do we have anyone in the audience here in support of National School Bus Safety Week? Yeah. Okay. So I would like to invite all those who are here in support of the AAC Awareness Month resolution to please join the board for a photo.
Oh no! It's a photo for National School Bus Safety Week, not for the resolution that they passed.
Oh, not for the School Bus Safety Week. Okay. Well, who wouldn't be for school bus safety?
That's a great question.
Who's against
but you know they're gonna. But you realize there are probably people that are out there that's like, no, I disagree.
Less safety. Less safety.
Agenda item 3.01, community participation. The next order of business is community participation. Speakers must limit their remarks to no more than 2 minutes in length. At the conclusion of 2 minutes, the microphone or video will be turned off. School board members will be listening but not responding to individual speakers. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as statements involving such as the capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Comments targeting, criticizing, or attacking individual students are not permitted during public meetings.
Unless it's Harry and Stephanie, then you can use their name and actually dox them in public. That's completely acceptable.
Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student or school-based employee.
It only applies to school-based employees. That's why.
That means everyone else.
Yeah, anybody else is fair game.
If you have a neighbor
and letter of the school division's non-discrimination policy.
If I am not
in Loudoun County or wherever.
Loudoun County, exactly. Can you imagine? If I have a problem with my neighbor, I'm going to go to Loudoun County School Board. I'm going to complain about that person at that school board meeting, because that's literally what they allowed to happen in this with this school board.
Did we drop Brian? He's all frozen up, or he looks asleep.
No, he's still. I see him.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
I'm looking at him. Kind of the way I feel. That's kind of how I feel, Brian, behind the wheel here. I'm just.
All right. Are they gonna show their faces? Because the last school board meeting, they had them all. They showed their faces. They allowed them to
student number
focus
2
and emphasize
when they agreed with them
their agenda.
When they agreed with them,
agree with them.
Really, I didn't notice that.
We'll see. If they agree with them, maybe they will.
There you go.
But this time, I don't think so.
Good evening. My name is Ollie. I'm here to ask you to address the issue regarding staff in FCPS schools and their accommodations for transgender students. Living as a transgender student in FCPS myself, I realize I have a lot of privileges because of the work the board has done, but I and many others still face conflicts. I'd like to discuss the lack of knowledge some faculty members have displayed. Getting my name changed in the system was a stressful process, and it shouldn't have been. Last year, I struggled to get my name changed in the system because a counselor had informed me that it wasn't possible to change my name in the school system without legal documentation. This forced me to find policy 2603, which states that I can change my name without submitting legal documents. I shouldn't have had to do this, and the counselor should have known that changing my name in the system was possible. While I don't blame the counselor for the lack of knowledge in this situation, these policies should be addressed more thoroughly in staff training sessions. That way they will know the policy if a trans student asks to change their name. I'd also like to address the issue of some staff members referring to their students by the incorrect pronouns and prohibiting trans students from accessing their gender-desired restrooms and locker rooms. A friend of mine who is non-binary experienced gym teachers stopping them from accessing their designated private changing room because teachers claimed that they were a girl and that because of their gender presentation. These teachers proceeded to tell my friends that they had to go into the girls' locker room. Gender expression isn't the same as gender identity, and the way you express yourself doesn't have to align with the way society strictly views gender. This fact should be highlighted in staff training as well to avoid similar situations. I've also had difficulty with a teacher in my middle school who would not stop calling me she, her, or ma'am, despite me informing this teacher I did not want to be addressed as a girl. She continued to recommend me books about the Bible and that are related to God. Staff training should accentuate respect for students' identity despite the teacher's different religious views. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is student number 3.
So the student is basically advocating for the Constitution to be overturned. The staff have no rights of conscience.
I hope everyone is having a good evening. My name is Sarah Hoffman, and I'm a senior at Lake Braddock Secondary School. I'm a part of the Jewish Community Relations Council student-to-student program. I'm here today to share my experience with having the high holidays given off for school. I would like to thank the school board for granting these days off. In previous years, I've always had to miss school for Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, and almost always missed important schoolwork and even tests. Missing school so early in the year set me back and put lots of stress on me, especially as someone who does lots of extracurricular activities outside of school. I would have to miss sports practices and games and Girl Scout campouts that were scheduled on the high holidays on top of missing schoolwork. My brother once had a teacher ask him, "Why are you absent so much?" It was only his second time being absent, and it was for the most important day of the year for Jewish people, yet the teacher had no clue. I never got a perfect attendance award despite only ever missing school for the holidays. Last year, when the high holidays were made a religious observance day, I still had tests and work given on those days. I had friends who couldn't risk missing school and had to go in despite it being the most religious days of the year for us. This year, by giving students off, you have decreased the pressure and stress on students throughout the county. This year, I didn't have to worry about what I was missing out on or stress about having to make up work. I was able to spend my day in synagogue, observing my faith without any outside distractions. For the first time, I felt recognized by the county I've grown up in. By giving school off, awareness about the holidays was also able to be spread. People asked, "Why do we have Wednesday off?" This opened up the chance for Jewish students to explain the holiday. Not having school on those days made other students realize just how important those days are to us. Again, thank you to the school board for giving Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah off, as well as Diwali and Eid. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tyler Willis.
This had a resolution on anti-bias, and yet the only holiday that's not referenced in Christian religious
I'm here to speak out against this school board. You've made it clear that your words and actions, that your priority is not the education of our children. The Teach Truth FCPS campaign clearly demonstrates that this board has outsourced its responsibilities to an activist group. Free and Anti-Racist Minds, which is where you got that language, their own website demands that FCPS curriculum be centered on social justice, include critical race theory and gender ideology, ignore state and national standardized assessments, and be independently examined for white supremacy. Zero mention of academic excellence. Zero mention of America's education falling behind the rest of the world. After years of gaslighting, parents have been proven right. The truth of the agenda behind this school board is not academics. You're using the education system to co-opt our children into your political activism. Further, in this resolution you claim, or should I say the activists claim for you, to promote the high expectations of our community around our historic truths, representative literature, and critical thinking. Does this school board intend to include the works of authors like Dr. Thomas Sowell or Dr. Walter Williams in FCPS curriculum? These brilliant Black Americans provide deep analysis and understanding of the causes of social issues for which you claim to care about, unlike hucksters such as Ibram X. Kendi, who this school board saw fit to pay tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars. Dr. Sowell and Dr. Williams' work stands in strong opposition with the educational curriculum and pedagogy you seek to promote. Does this scholarship count as representative? The Teach Truth FCPS campaign states your true motivations: to align with far-left political activists, to enlist our children in your political activism, and to do so over the rights and objections of Fairfax County parents. In summary, this is not education, this is activism, and I stand against it.
Thank you.
Notice that they have look at the back of their head. That is very well said. Too bad we couldn't see his face, but yet if you look at the last school board meeting, they had all of those activists, all those children that were being manipulated. They had the front of their, they showed their faces. Let's say former shadow board members.
It's good to see you. Thank you for having conversation and listening to past issues and sharing ideas. For the rest of you, let me start my statement with a quote from the late Horace Mann, a pioneer for public schools in America. Education is our political safety. Public education is the cornerstone of our community and our democracy. I have one request tonight, and it's a voice of 100 parents across our great county. We want an open public forum to discuss the issues that concern us. Why is this so difficult to understand and organize? Many don't agree with you on topics like trans kids, expansion, and the lack of public comment on a resolution you just voted on tonight. Historic truths and representative literature. This is all anybody needs to understand our nation's history, the Constitution of the United States. You all need to reread the school board code of ethics. Once again, you didn't listen, and frankly, as elected officials, it's disrespectful to us as voters, parents, and taxpayers in Fairfax County. In my eyes, this is failed leadership. You have pushed political agendas ahead of student and school performance. Parent voices and rights, including mine, protected by Virginia Code and teacher views, are unheard, coerced, and held hostage. Education is better with choice. As an example, funds could be used for parent scholarships for private-led programs like Mathnasium. While you don't view it as a priority, true leaders believe in accountability and transparency. We've all had enough. To begin early preparations for November 23 as chair, we've established the Virginia Parents First Coalition, a movement to support conservative principal candidates to take your seats on a dais. Like Governor Youngkin, these new school board candidates believe that parents matter and want to renew and strengthen traditional safe and disciplined, common sense classroom values in our schools. Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stacey Rose Harris.
Parent rights.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. I grew up in Fairfax County. I'm a product of the elementary schools, the Washington Irving Middle School, and TJ. I moved back to the area after law school, and I practiced law, and all my children's teachers asking for them to send the work and what my kids missed. For the first time, I didn't have to remember to call them out of school. For the first time, I didn't have to explain why other kids were going to school and they weren't that day. For the first time, we didn't worry about missing something. And during these days over the last few weeks, I was acutely aware of this difference during the holidays, and it made the day much more pleasurable and enjoyable for us as a family. During this time, I also thought of all of you with gratitude for your vote to support the new calendar. And not only, of course, gratitude for those who were in support of this change all along, but those who were undecided but kept an open mind and voted in favor of it at the end. I attended a town hall meeting shortly before the vote and was fortunate to be able to share my views with Ms. Keys-Gamarra, who ultimately voted in favor of the new calendar, and I appreciated her willingness to listen. It should not be left unsaid also that the holidays and inclusion of Diwali and Orthodox and
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jenna White.
I've heard a lot of parents objecting, by the way, to the school calendar thing, because a lot of people who observe these holidays work on those days and then have to get childcare anyhow.
Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yeah, it's been
Today is
very
Purple at
unpopular.
Fairfax. This topic is personal to me. I'm speaking on behalf of the officers of the Fairfax County Council PTA or FCCPTA. I'm also a parent of 2 Fairfax County Public School students.
But yeah, you're absolutely
When I entered for a spot to speak tonight, I listed mental health as my topic. But we also wanted to speak to our support for Dr. Anderson's resolution, Truthful Education in FCPS. That left me with 3 topics in 2 minutes: domestic violence, mental health, and truth in teaching. They are actually inextricably connected. Earlier this month, myself and a team of advocates and staff met with Dr. Reed and FCPS senior leadership to discuss the state and teach truth in history. Otherwise, we are adding to the load of toxic stress our students and educators of colors are exposed to.
They were lockstep with the
We stand for truth in teaching as outlined in Dr. Anderson's resolution. We urge you to learn more about ACEs. I have sent you information about an upcoming webinar we're hosting around ACE interface, along with Fairfax County community partners. The public is also welcome to attend and can learn more at fccpta.org under the events section. Thank you.
Discrimination against
Thank you.
agents,
Our next speaker is Michael Ginsberg.
Racism, that's somehow not.
Oh, now we've got the speaker.
Let's go, Mike.
Last month, the National Center for Education Statistics released its nation's report card showing the pandemic school closures wiped out 2 decades of reading and math test score progress. We also know that the school closures exacerbated education gaps among racial and socioeconomic groups. This is a generational catastrophe. So why are we spending our evening revising and revisiting the controversial issues policy rather than addressing this learning loss crisis? The policy already requires us to teach controversial issues impartially, objectively, and with sensitivity. It is perfectly fine. And why are we spending so much disproportionate time dealing with issues like gender dysphoria, which, with all due respect, affect a small number of the 180,000 students in the Fairfax County school system? We have a 5-alarm educational fire, and this board is rearranging the furniture in the burning house. Every school board meeting should begin and end with the question, where do we stand in our efforts to help our children recover from pandemic learning loss? This should be the alpha and omega of everything this school board does until the crisis is over. So I implore you, instead of discussing faddish issues that might make us feel like civil rights champions, but instead ignores the biggest problem we face in education in this country today. Pandemic learning loss hit all students, but especially students of color, students of color, low-income students, minority students, and special needs students. So if you really want to look in the mirror and see a civil rights hero, focus on that problem and solve it, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Samuel Lewis.
In the 1960s, DC Comics introduced Bizarro World, where everything was the opposite of Earth. So the planet was cube-shaped, good was bad, ugly was pretty, stupid was smart, wrong was right. This ain't no comic book, but if you want to understand the real meaning of this Teach Truth resolution, really an indoctrinate youth manifesto, you need to be fluent in the bizarro language of critical race theory. Fortunately, I'm bilingual. In CRT world, anti-racist means judging people by the color of their skin, not the content of their character. In fact, CRT anti-racism has as much to do with the real anti-racism as the People's Republic is Republican. In CRT, the cure for so-called systemic injustice is more injustice against the politically unfavored. What a wonderful ideal to teach our children. Your ancestor was oppressed, so to right that wrong, it's your turn to oppress someone. In CRT, historical truths are crafted which distort history to generate favored treatment for selected identity groups. While true justice is colorblind, CRT social justice is always color aware. And equity, well, let's use a real live example of bizarro equity. During the pandemic, the superintendent of schools for Evanston, Illinois, near Chicago, proposed that in-person learning would be reserved for Black and brown students and other marginalized groups. White children could only attend school remotely in the name of equity. When parents naturally complained, the school board responded with an open letter that announced, quote, when you challenge policies and protocols established to ensure an equitable experience for Black and brown students, you are part of a continuum of resistance to equity and desire to maintain white supremacy. In CRT world, equity is intentionally inequitable. And, savor the irony, if you oppose this racist resolution, CRT says you're a white supremacist, regardless of your race, religion, ethnicity, or heritage. CRT proponents should be ashamed of themselves. They're not teaching truth. They're brainwashing with leftist propaganda that fosters bigotry and hatred.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brooke Corbett.
Why isn't the camera at their faces?
This chart was created by a mom who watched over 3,200 minutes or 53 hours of last year's school board meetings, then recorded how much time was spent discussing each topic. A digital copy was forwarded for each of you. The y-axis shows the major topics discussed in each meeting, and the x-axis shows how much time out of the 3,200 minutes in percent was spent per topic. On the bottom, at roughly 22%, the largest chunk of time spent was discussing resolutions and recognitions. Budget and COVID-related discussions registered at 9% and 7% respectively. Changes to SR&R, including use of cell phones and pronouns, took almost 5%. The legislative package, including lobbying, the school year calendar, and ESSER spending discussions all registered at 3% each. The school board discussed advanced academics, learning loss mitigation, special education, and academic curriculum changes 0 to 1% of the time. In other words, all academic and learning related topics summed together comprised roughly 1 hour out of 53 total hours of discussion in last year's regular meetings. The mom also noted a conspicuous absence of discussion relating to teacher supports to assist with learning loss remediation. This data suggests that the school board has wasted significant chunks of time and frequently prioritized lucrative, powerful outside alliances and non-academic, sometimes politically divisive topics over planning and implementing solutions for academic achievement and recovery, and over representing the opinions of all constituents and district staff. Fairfax County taxpayers should be reminded that these school board priorities are funded by a $3.4 billion budget.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aaron Lobato.
Another really good one.
Great way to say that you are not doing your job, school board.
Yeah, that's what they're hearing today.
Hello, and welcome to Virginia, Superintendent Reed. Board members, at every meeting, parents stand here and pour their hearts out. Do you really listen? Do you ever think, that's a good point? Do you ever follow up? For many of us, it feels as if you do not. It feels as if this board is focused on driving cultural change, progressive activism, and social justice, ignoring persistent, increasing achievement gaps, and sidelining parents whenever it's more convenient. Our student reading and math scores are at concerningly low levels, and even more so for our most at-risk kids, yet this barely rates a mention from you all. You also seem unconcerned with plummeting enrollment. Over the past 5 years, FCPS has lost almost 9,000 students, particularly in the younger grades. This is the equivalent of 4 entire high schools just gone. Do you know why they're leaving? Your preoccupation with a fight against a parental right to know what is going on with our own transgender child and a parent's right to opt their own child out of wearing a mask to school are clearly priorities. It is not clear reading, writing, science, and arithmetic are. And now your blatant disregard for our long-standing policy to ensure that any classroom discussion of controversial issues respects differing viewpoints is being sneakily sidestepped with the ironically named initiative proposed tonight. You all have 1 year left in your tenure. I beg you to use it to refocus on the academic needs of all children and let our schools be a haven for learning free from the social justice wars. I challenge you to spend less of your meetings handing out awards, accolades, and thanking one another, and more time addressing real achievement gaps and respecting different viewpoints. Failure to do so will be a strong
Well said.
Well done.
Well said.
Who was that?
You know they weren't letting her have 1 extra second.
Our next speaker is Marissa Solly.
That was great.
That was
Aaron Lovato.
Aaron Lovato, yeah.
I came to tell you that my community, the Jewish community, is being targeted. In just the last few weeks, UC Berkeley Law School student organizations excluded Jewish students from their groups. GW students screamed Intifada revolution outside the Jewish communal and religious building. Kanye West has been on an anti-Semitic rant for days, and here in Fairfax County, swastikas and the statement, "Jews will not replace us," was written on a high school wall. A Title VI complaint was filed against Fairfax County in January of 2022, detailing numerous incidents of anti-Semitic harassment of Jewish students. Worse, the complaint documents how Fairfax County administrators have essentially ignored these incidents. To this day, this school superintendent have not responded to the Title VI complaint. The Truthful Education resolution sought to indoctrinate students with the ideology of anti-racism, which divides society into 2 groups, oppressors and oppressed. Jews, due to their perceived success and general skin color, are seen as oppressors, even though, according to FBI data, Jews make up only 2% of the population, but are the targets of 60% of religiously motivated hate crimes. Critical race theory and so-called anti-racism are themselves racist ideologies that drive the virulent anti-Semitism we see overtaking college campuses and our own high schools. FCPS has regulations that require teachers to maintain impartiality and objectivity in teaching controversial issues to prevent indoctrinating students. Anti-racism.
I'm sorry, point of order. Could the speaker please state their name?
I'm speaking for Marissa. I have her power of attorney right here. She had an emergency.
Speaker substitutions are not allowed, ma'am.
I have a power of attorney to speak for her.
Speaker substitutions are allowed per our rules.
She had a family emergency and has to leave
substitutions.
Are you really going to stop me?
Speaker substitutions are not allowed per our rules.
Point of order. I'd like to consult our parliamentarian, given that she's an attorney.
I have a power of attorney here. She had an emergency. Her father had surgery, and she asked me to speak for her.
No, it's up to the board whether to allow an exception to their rule. If they don't want to allow substitutions, then they do not have to.
Maybe they should
Our
vote.
current
Let's see how they
governance
vote.
manual does not allow speaker substitutions.
Madam Chair, may I ask, he said it's up to the board. I believe she's almost finished speaking.
I hadn't finished. If the board would...
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
You can you can ask the board to vote on whether to allow her to continue speaking. But it would be, the board's decision would be final on the matter.
Yeah, I want to see how they vote on this issue.
Would we like to take a vote? Are we voting to, well, Mr. Parliament, are we voting to suspend the rules? Because right now that is our rule.
Yeah, I would say that it would be a suspension of the rules. A 2/3 vote would be required.
If they vote against
No
her
debate.
speaking,
Yeah,
this
who's
is
going to vote against?
So I will ask if we'd like to take a vote to suspend the rules. Hang on one second. To suspend the rules to allow the speaker to finish speaking. However, we will be setting a precedent.
I'm going to vote to suspend the rules. I would vote to suspend the rules. Absolutely.
Yeah, you should vote
No,
to
I'm
suspend the
going
rules.
to ask for the vote.
Is that really a question? I wouldn't even bring that up.
2% of the population, 60%.
I'm going to ask for the vote. I'll ask for the vote. We would like to suspend the rules to allow the speaker to substitute to speak for the original speaker. All those in favor?
Point of order, Madam Chair. Point of order, Madam Chair. I'd like to just raise to our parliamentarian that this may, given this power of attorney question that we have not in fact specified, could this be subject to interpretation such that we don't set a precedent by making this decision tonight?
Mr. Mase, that is not a point of order. That's a point of order is a process question.
This is a process question.
Is that a point of order? Is that an appropriate point of order, Mr. Parliamentarian?
I mean, if somebody is the official, like designated representative of somebody.
Hang on, Ms. Mase, hang on. I'm going to take a break.
Very interesting.
And we'll figure this out. Mr. Foster?
We're taking a break. They're going to discuss it.
We'll take a break.
What's the question? We were sidebarred.
If somebody arises having the power of attorney to represent somebody,
Right.
would that be considered a speaker substitution, which is not allowed in our rules?
They could have just
Right? Or would that be subject to interpretation?
We had like 20 seconds left.
Well, no, it's a speaker substitution, and I think that there's a motion. Excuse me. There's a motion that's pending before the board.
It's a motion pending before the board with 2/3 vote to allow for speakers to suspend the rules to allow for speaker substitutions. All those in favor?
They're all looking at each other.
That is Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, and Ms. McLaughlin. All those opposed?
Interesting.
That motion
I don't
fails.
think they got 2/3. Yeah, so they're not going to let her speak. The board is silencing her.
Our
now.
next speaker is Amber Iglesias.
Wow. So they're
She had a very
anti-Asian and they're
powerful message.
anti-Semitic.
Our next speaker is Tyrone Santos.
Finished.
They had the
Kweli
power, and this is how they
Zuccheri.
used it.
This is, don't let her finish. We don't agree with what she's saying, so she can't finish.
Yeah,
speaking.
there's hate crimes going on. We're not.
Peace, good evening. I'm Kweli Zuccheri, Dr. Kweli Zuccheri, here representing FAM, Free and Anti-Racist Minds. Thank you to those board members who have been,
from the organization.
who have supported anti-racism or the work that we want to see done. I also want to mention I come here in the footsteps of my ancestors. My grandfather was a pioneering black historian at a time when he was told in the 40s that there was no significant black history, that black history wasn't worth doing, and that a black man could not do research on black history objectively. Experienced racism, right? I think what's happened here tonight, I'm very disappointed that this amendment was passed because I think it was a really underhanded, I suspect. It was a great way of not having to vote no, but also completely undermining the substance of the actual message, right? And I want to talk about the word anti-racism specifically because it feels like people are very misinformed. If you're against anti-racism, you're either racist, you're misinformed about what anti-racism actually means, or you're privileged enough not to have experienced American racism. So it's not something that's on the forefront of your mind. Every time in this country that progress has been made, there's been pushback. But every time that progress has been made, people have continued to press on. And that's what I want to see you do, right? People here have talked about being distracted by ideology and things of that nature, that we should focus on academics. Well, guess what? I got my PhD in developmental psychology. What I studied was what happens to black and brown students, as the sister here has mentioned earlier, how they feel unheard in the classroom. Do you think that affects their academic achievement? It probably does, right? So if we don't recognize them through anti-racism and through truth, and I don't have time here to teach everyone all about all these things, but if we don't do this, we are taking a step backward, and Fairfax County is not setting a good precedent. You all are not moving with history right now.
Sam, let's turn this down.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kathy.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's bring that up. Okay. Yeah. So he wants to talk about anti-racism. No, Brian, go ahead. I'll let you go first because I want to address that comment. Go ahead.
No, my only point is, we talk about teaching science. We talk about critical thinking, right? And so if you say
Hi,
not
good evening,
focusing
Dr.
on
Reed,
School board,
everybody's
thank you so
race,
much.
particularly
It's been an exciting
black students'
evening.
race, causes them to do poorly because they're not heard. Then that means if you have one or two students who are Asian in the classroom and you don't constantly focus on their race, they're going to do poorly. Yet every single shred of evidence counters or clearly doesn't support what he's saying. The notion that somebody gave him a doctorate is the biggest joke of the whole night. That guy can't even understand causality or critical thinking. And it's just shown what a joke our academic system has become to give that man a doctorate.
I am glad that you said that because, Sam, I wanted to address that because some people are misinterpret this when you talk about, children of color that may not be called upon or encouraged to work through a problem. That is a teacher education training issue and understanding how to deal with different cultural issues. That is not necessarily racism dealing with it. And you're absolutely right. That man who tried to state himself with his expertise saying that I know more than you was absolutely wrong in what he had just said. And so that is a totally different, that can be addressed through a cultural awareness shift in training for teachers, not anti-racism training. That is not racist. That people who might do something like that would do so completely being unaware of what they're doing. Go ahead.
And so here, let's speak to that. You set up performance metrics oftentimes to affect behavior or get results. So his argument is, if we do this one technique, we'll get better results in the classroom, right? Well, the answer to that question is, why don't we evaluate teachers on how much academic growth you generate in your minority students, right? Yes. In other words, hey, let's measure teachers on results and promote those and encourage those and reward those and who do well and train others how to do it rather than presuppose that his technique that has no evidence whatsoever is going to get the results, even though all the evidence indicates that the growth of minority students in these districts is below average, and yet they don't care about the academic results of these minority students.
You're absolutely right. If you make the metric where they have to measure the academic growth, that corrects that issue. They will have you get what you measure. They will redouble an effort to ensure and to encourage that child learns. Absolutely agree with you.
I like what Mike Ginsburg said earlier. If you really want to be a civil rights pioneer, let's talk about learning loss and how to address.
Hold on. They're talking about parental rights. Hold on one second.
Their children secret from the parents.
Hold that thought.
In Superintendent Michelle Reed's 7-paragraph email to the community concerning the policies, there was not one mention of parents, because in her view, parents have no place in being informed of major issues in their child's life. The parents rightfully believe that it's their job to raise, nurture, guide, and shape the values, morals, and values of their own children. Parents love their kids. We hug them when they've had a bad day. We encourage them when they're down. We listen to them when they're confused and guide them regarding choices that will affect the rest of their lives. These are our children. They are not the wards of the state, and they belong to the parents, and the parents alone. So to get back to the original question, does the school board have the right to displace parents in the primary giver role? Absolutely not. No way, no way, no way we will allow that to happen in Fairfax County. This is the line that all parents and voters must stand up for. Hold the line.
Our next video was submitted by Kara Danner.
All right, Stephanie.
My name is Kara Danner, and I'm a member of the Executive Board of the Fairfax County Council PTA. This year, several FCC
we don't need to worry
PTAs
about this one. Let's promote this one. I have no respect for Fairfax County PTA. Remember, the vice president of that organization was linked to that Pride Liberation Project. He may not be responsible, but first of all, they're not a parent advocacy group. So anyway, wow, that has been amazing. I mean, they have these policies where they're going against Glenn Youngkin. I'd like to see more from the governor actually enforce like the state policy with Fairfax County with what they're doing. Any thoughts about that?
It is interesting. What is the enforcement mechanism?
PTA is going against Youngkin, or the Fairfax is going against Youngkin?
Virginia PTA. I saw the Virginia PTA actually go down to Richmond and actually try to claim falsely that they actually represent parents. I mean, they really don't. I mean, they're a mechanism and arm of the NEA. And the Fairfax County, I mean, they're the same actors. Fairfax County PTA, there's a lot of cross pollination, but like most of the time, if you're involved in these organizations, you'll find that they'll actually will suppress parent advocacy. If you want a parental advocacy organization, you need to have a PTO, not a PTA. A PTA doesn't provide any value to the parent. I mean, it's.
But are you saying the PTA spoke out against Youngkin, even though Youngkin won the election on the back of parental rights?
Yeah, I know, it's amazing that they keep saying that, and even during the work session,
Chair,
they're talking about groups.
Recess, please.
When they talked about forming advocacy groups.
All right, Doctor, we will take a 5-minute recess
very
before we have the presentation.
Sam, a little bit. They focused very much on having teacher involvement, and then they didn't really talk about parental groups. They were actually, when they talked about parents, it was almost like diluting them, including them with teachers. I mean, this school board absolutely does not want to deal with with parents. I mean, we have primacy for Virginia law and the Constitution regarding the care and upbringing of our children, and they seem not to like the 14th Amendment. We know they don't like the First Amendment. We definitely know they hate the Second. But yeah, it's interesting. Because Mark Spooner was in the work session and they didn't feel comfortable explaining it to her then. She couldn't articulate what it was that she was referring to during the school board meeting.
She didn't respond to my email when I asked her what it was about.
Yeah, she couldn't respond to your email when they asked it. I mean, I've looked at what incident bias reporting systems, and it's overly vague. And again, like, my concern from a privacy perspective, from a cyber perspective, like, why are you collecting data to infer that a student committed an act that was a bias? I mean, this is really designed to shape and mold behavior. It's almost as if it's a part of just for relevant proof. I mean, Facebook has come under fire during influence operations during the 2016 presidential election, and that was impacting adults. And then it further got called on the Hill for the negative influence it had on young women, with body image. And now they're using all of these tools to go into the younger, impressionable minds. Like, parents should really be concerned about this. I mean, if you are on the far left who are a privacy advocate, I mean, if you are dealing with the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, this should really, really concern you. This is a threat to that. This is a direct threat to that. It was your child's development. So let's see. We have, I don't know if they don't have it on the agenda, the bias incident reporting system.
Well, that would be, it's under the strategic plan. That's supposed to be part of the strategic plan.
Oh, wow. When I was listening to this,
and then do you remember you said, you were talking about the work session, and you said that they really wanted to use the surveys to create the strategic plan, but they didn't seem to know exactly how they were going to do that. And that's what they were talking about, maximum participation. So maybe they'll talk a little bit about that in the strategic planning portion of the evening.
Okay. Yeah. So you just want to just hold on to the strategic plan. Let's see. Is that the next thing on the agenda?
Yes, yeah. That's the next thing on the agenda. I think something's coming on that.
Just letting Sam. Yeah, that's probably the only thing really worth talking about, because we already know there's really nothing else of importance here.
And usually, so they just took a recess right now, and it's kind of interesting what right now they're recessing. I don't know if they're planning something. I think somebody called for recess before they voted on whether or not to suspend the rules to allow that woman to continue talking. They wanted recess to talk about. Can we just talk about how dysfunctional that was?
They said they're taking a 5-minute recess, and then they're going to be back for a presentation. That's all they said.
Oh.
Yeah, it should be the strategic plan update. No, that'll be skipping it, because next is on the agenda, strategic plan updates, and this is where they said they didn't even understand what a strategic plan was. And I think you're right. Like, with this survey data, I mean, that's when you're going to start using to collect these metrics for this bias incident reporting. And from what I've seen in other schools across the country, it is so vague. And it's disruptive to the student, because if they get an indicator that a student may have a bias, they interject the student. They disrupt that student's day and intervene with them. So there's already case precedent where they're disrupting the student. And these social justice initiatives, I mean, they are disruptive to learning. We already saw with like the walkout over Glenn Youngkin's policy. Most of the students didn't support the policy; they just wanted to skip class, and they just used that as an opportunity to do so. Yeah, kids are going to do. Kids are going to skip school. I mean,
but we heard the video. It doesn't matter if they actually support or not, because the helicopter's counting the heads.
Yeah,
they got if you're with them or not. So you may as well just encourage them to skip class. I mean, according to the people who were organizing it, according to the adults who were organizing it.
I think it's worth staying on the strategic plan, and then I suggest after they get through that, maybe the superintendent updates.
I think for this one, I think Sam's going to keep the volume low, because I think he's got to step away when they do come back. So when we hear him, we can talk over it, but he will. If we want to listen, we'll have to focus on it. Because I'm looking at the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, because that could go on for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing of
go on for a long time.
Yeah, it could go on for a long time. But Sam, we just want to have it low enough where if we're quiet, we can hear it, but we don't want to have to yell over it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can turn it down. I just don't know that the audience is going to be able to hear it well enough. You know what I mean?
Well, we have a lot of insight, like just how dysfunctional they are when it comes to planning.
Oh, you were commenting, Harry, about them cutting off that woman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was horrendous. That was a hate crime that they were being informed about. I think they looked over process over substance in this one, because there was a clear hate crime going on against the community. And instead of like taking that in and accepting that this is an issue that's going on, that they are obligated to take action, they wanted to follow form and procedure, and I think they lost sight of what should have taken precedence.
They were hiding behind form and procedure. Arguably.
Yeah.
So she was arguing against CRT, critical race theory, and I think that if she would have been arguing in favor of the Truth in Education initiative, I'm willing to bet they would have said, let's suspend the rule just this one time for her. But if she wasn't with their narrative, so the camera wasn't going to be in the front of her face, and they weren't going to allow her to speak. It's typical for what they do, how they operate.
In 20 seconds left, I mean, when they realize that, oh wow, we really created an issue with our policies, that a group is getting targeted and a group is being persecuted, the right thing to do is that if you're a school board member is to look after the health and the safety, first of all, the safety first, and educating our children, and you're neglecting the safety aspect of the children that are in the schools. That is something you should have listened to first. I mean, I would not have. I mean, if it was a violation of a Roberts rules in that case, I would have allowed that to continue. I would have been taking notes. I would have gotten the contact information of that attorney, and I would have followed up with that. And I would have wanted to know what was done and figure out what is going on with that investigation. I would not have stopped that person from speaking, and nor if someone did try to speak that, I would actually
cut them off.
Yeah, just cut them off. I would say no, absolutely not. And if I was a sole school board member in there, I would actually get up and I would get that woman's contact information, and I would be following up with that person, because that is unacceptable. They should not.
That was quite a display.
That was quite a display. One, they created the conditions for that to happen, and then you saw how they reacted. That is a failure of leadership. That is a complete failure of leadership. That is completely unacceptable.
How did they know it wasn't the speaker? How did they even know it wasn't her?
They probably
it took them a long time to figure it out.
She asked her to state her name.
But how did she know to ask her to state her name?
But why did she ask her? I've never heard anyone be interrupted before and say, "Wait a minute, hold on. It's been a minute and 40 seconds."
Well,
now
somebody
probably.
It'd be interesting.
I'm sure she was texted.
I'm sure somebody texted her and said that's not so and so. Right.
Yeah, right. She probably was texted, because I could see if it was one of us, they would know what we look like. But you're right. How would they know to do that? And then get texted, and then and the thought process was, oh well, this is really wrong going on. Let me stop this person right now. And I mean, you have a swastika in a high school. How did that not hit the news? How do we not become aware of this?
That's a great question, and we're aware now.
As a community,
I mean,
how is this acceptable?
I would like to hear the rest of what she had to say. I mean, they could have just let her finish in 20 seconds, but instead they decided to take 5 minutes to decide to silence her. I mean, that was just. Ooh. It's a very interesting story what they did to her. That was indicative of just how they handle things, like their procedural, the way that they handle speakers, the way that they don't care about just kind of the community in general. And it was really interesting. During the work session, I saw part of it, and they were talking about, when they were talking about the strategic plan, Michelle Reed was saying that she was going to try to get different groups involved, and I know that she says a lot of things, but I was like, well, this is interesting, and she included faith leaders, and they were like, why? Somebody interrupted her and said, why would you include leaders from the faith community? And I thought that was an interesting question. And generally, faith leaders have a more conservative perspective, except unless you're choosing from a certain area. But anyways,
yes.
But yeah, they were asking her about that. So they don't necessarily want to hear from people.
You would think, like, why wouldn't you reach out to the mosque? Why would you reach out to the Hindu temples? Why would you not reach out to the Hispanic churches, to the Black church? Why would you not reach out to these leaders that are representative of the actual community?
After our break. So agenda item 3.02, strategic plan update. I call on Dr. Reed for an update on the strategic plan.
Yeah, you didn't get it. You didn't get anywhere. They want to use kids to peer pressure other kids to fill out these surveys.
Even though they don't know what their strategy is going to be.
Yeah, I have no idea what their strategy is going to be.
Indoctrination dressed as inclusivity.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Board. So what I'm going to share this evening is an abbreviated set of slides from those which we shared at our work session. But I want to make sure that our community understands the process we're embarking on. And
there is no process. They just want to data mine your kids.
This work as we begin to establish our North Star that will connect us this year.
The North Star should be education.
Ideally, we're looking at 2 questions, really, when we sum things up. And the 2 questions Mutu Fabai has been talking with us a great deal about.
Is that focused on academics, those 2 questions?
How are the children and how is your household? And as we progress through the next few months, we're going to talk a lot about how we are and how we're able to achieve great outcomes for our students in the coming months. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Thank you. One of the things that's really important, and we had a chance, our leadership team, and I had a chance to meet with our high school principals and our elementary principals today. And there's a lot of discussion around workload issues right now and the challenges of the work returning from the pandemic. And one of the things that I believe a strategic plan is going to do is not add work, but rather align the work that we're currently doing. When our work's aligned, we're able to be more efficient and I think feel less overwhelmed at times while getting stronger results for our students. So we're really excited about this power of alignment because we know that our initiatives, while
do you see that? Like,
well-intentioned,
like this is something new.
Great, impassioned.
I was just gonna say that. Why does it need to be explained?
This is
why we need to have a plan.
Yeah, this is why you need to have a plan.
I mean,
they're explaining to us why a plan is even necessary.
These are the adults in charge that need to explain why we need to have a plan.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make clear
our different groups, which I'll describe here in a moment. So that's our work for October, November. And we plan to have formal board approval by May 23rd. of our strategic
talking about planning to make a plan.
To launch this over the summer and be ready to roll in the fall of 2023. This is work that our intent is to seek all voices in the community as we proceed over the next several months to define the direction for the future of our division. Next
Hopefully
slide,
that includes
please.
parents.
The
So
process,
Stephanie, you missed. They're discussing why do we need to have a plan.
It's really a three-step process. We're going to look at
and the plan to make the plan.
And that's student data.
So they're like, we have a $4 billion budget.
This is where they're going to try to mine student data to justify why we have to have a plan.
What does the data say?
Oh.
Why does it look the way it looks? And then finally, the third piece is, what are we going to do about it? And when we put those three pieces together, it's our intent as we work with our students, our staff, our parents, our families, our community members.
So this concept is that they have no idea what the mission of what the school district is supposed to do. A vision, which clearly there's enough data that already shows what it is, COVID learning loss, when you need to resolve it by failing scores. They don't want to address that. They just want to do a crowdsource of how are you and how is your household.
In the first circle is really around student learning. The second
this is this the first we've heard about learning today?
Is our instructional effectiveness, which sits within the context of an empowering infrastructure. Next slide, please.
Remember, it's an equity focus, instructional resources. That's equity grading.
Oh, okay. Oh, I misunderstood. I thought for a second that we were going to hear something about
learning. Remember, that's equity grading. That's watering down your curriculum, making it easy for everyone to pass, or preventing stellar performance.
50% for being there. You showed up.
Being there, or not even being there. For not being there.
Oh yeah, you don't have to be there. You don't have to be there.
Voices again. With the expectation of being able to align in a unified direction. We're talking about
there's this thing called math, right? Like, hey, you guys, do you want to teach math? Let's talk about science, reading. I see just so much about
students and our community writ large.
Parents need to be aware. If you can't take that survey home with you and show your parents what they're asking you, don't fill out the survey.
Yes, when you get something that says, do you want to opt out? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes. You would like to opt out,
good.
Trust us. It's not good things in there.
They are using this data mining to create a social credit score for your child. That's what it's going to be used for. How good of a socialist are they?
And this group will be, if you will, an iterative group, receiving reports and information from all of the other
They're going to use students to push this.
In a synergistic fashion. In other words, work will come back and go out.
Did you just say synergistic fashion?
As we begin the analysis.
Oh, she's using the buzzword bingo. We're going to right size, reach back, synergy to right size our efforts.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Again, this is a slide in terms
what do they always say? Wait, can I get a call back?
Can I get a call back? Oh, she learned that. That was new terminology. She's from the West Coast.
Relative engagement commitment folks will make for each committee or each forum.
She's in D.C. area, man. We all
will they allow us to participate on their stakeholder committees?
Interesting question. You mentioned that the stakeholder committees. They said that they do not limit who can participate. It's basically first come, first serve. Now, how they advertise those is one thing, but I'm pretty sure if they know who we are, I'm sure we probably won't get on those boards, right? Because we actually care about kids.
Well, Harry, they did announce 15 community forums, so you can certainly show up at those.
So I have Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to just thank you, Dr. Reed, for the synopsis. I think it's important to share with the community what our plans are. I know that
she has her mask on now.
Now she has her mask on.
She is safe. She's safe now. She wasn't before. Brian Reed, the one who asked the question.
She's got to show her woke creds, you know.
Well, she wasn't virtue signaling enough.
Is that chart which talks about that's
you know what they showed their true colors by cutting off that speaker. They just showed how inept and how unqualified they are when they cut off that speaker.
Our school system should be to meet the.
If they don't follow up with
Such
that,
an
if there's
interesting
not,
development.
if they're not coming down on that, they're a failure. They're not looking after the safety of our children. We already know that with the Pride Liberation Project, but this further reinforces that. I mean, you're told about a hate crime. That should be priority.
Ensure that we are all in alignment and that the resources are in alignment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members wish to speak? Ms. Keys-Gamarra?
Thank you. I appreciate.
This is usually where they introduce some kind of strange motion or something, or.
And I hope.
Yeah, it's good to see that she's actually at a meeting in person. She's always virtual for these work sessions, and she was completely unprepared for it too. She didn't even discuss what was on topic. They had to correct her and just say, "Hey, we're not discussing that."
On the T stand and just let you hit it. I know the answers, but I think the community, the community needs to hear how this process is focused on academics and student success.
It's not. There's nothing to say.
That's
nothing to do with academics.
This plan is about.
She's like, now she's gonna make a word salad.
Oh, look at this.
Strategic plans and goals being student.
Look at the tab.
She set it up on a tee, and Superintendent Reed can't even hit the T-ball off the tee.
About the trajectory of the rest of each and every one of our students' lives.
Did you see
not
this?
just about the time they spend with us. What this plan and process will enable us to do as a community is to identify those outcomes we believe as a community and a division are most important for each and every one of us.
Not academics.
Not academics.
Not actually academics. She's answering the
Apparently,
question.
no one coached Karen Keys-Gamarra what question not to ask.
About
like how
student success.
we go around academics, and we're going to use this as
I will ask the question. I know you've had several town halls in the community. Now we're going in this period of outreach. I look forward to, and you may not have an answer to it, but I do have some concerns about how
She didn't have any
many
answer to
times
the last
people are
one.
going to be willing to come out, how we may need to adjust how we reach out to people or how we find ourselves in their worlds to be able to have effective communication. So I'm a little worried about, outreach burnout, right? And people's willingness to respond. Or is that them?
We literally had the camera
so I know we'll be having ongoing conversations, but
the week after, because they were speaking at something that you weren't aligned with the agenda, and you used in the front of manipulating children,
I believe you added
with a group that's encouraging kids to run away from their parents.
But you added a category specifically for parents to make sure that we are hearing from them.
Let's talk about parents.
And I think
We're
those were
hearing
my
from
comments. I just
parents.
really wanted to
We're
make
hearing
sure.
from parents?
So,
in light
was
of
that a
all the noise
question,
that we kinda
or
heard
are they
tonight,
hearing
that we
from
get
parents?
back
Are they
to,
streaming us?
This is what we're
They're not
about. We've
listening
never
to
lost
parents.
Focus. I don't believe we have. But
did they?
Did she admit that she doesn't think we're listening
I
to
think they
parents?
lost focus.
of that.
They never lost focus.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
I'm going to call on that one.
I appreciate you.
I want to hear this.
Of how often will people come out, and I want to remind us that one of the
when they do come out, we like to cut them off and not listen to them if they disagree with us.
Students grades 3 through 12 having an opportunity
or we sick activists on. Yeah.
This is the
provide their
surveys.
feedback as well as all staff.
Provide their feedback.
And as well as all parents and families, right? So, and we'll be sharing more ways to participate. But I think that's really well said. If ever
SEL surveys.
I've
got a question they should include on the survey.
So thank you for
what percentage of the strategic
Thank you, Ms.
actions and goals should be related to academics? Like 10%, 50%, 75%, like 90%. I guarantee you, every parent will say 90% of the maximum allowed.
They sure would. There were more.
Sharing with our community that we're beginning this process.
I dare them. I double dare them to put a question like that on the
setting
survey.
the new vision, the new plan for our
It's the
entire
feedback
division.
we should offer to them. We
And
have a question we'd like to put on your survey
paying
for the
attention and that they're
community.
part of this process. You know, Dr. Reed, I've really appreciated
What percentage
your efforts
should
to
this
make
be
sure that you're
focused on
doing robust
academics?
public engagement. Those have been conversations that are ongoing.
Because in their mind, it should be 20%.
Robust for us.
Well, according to what they discussed at school board meetings, wasn't it like academics for like 5% or something?
Less than 5%. Less than 5% over last year.
Together that doesn't have holes, that makes everyone feel they're a part of it, and that doesn't end up right with the divisions we're constantly trying to avoid.
Let's let's
Tim
listen
said
to the
division trying
expert
to
on
avoid-
children.
She's talking about divisions that she created.
Make sure this moment is passed without recognizing that this is a huge opportunity for us. And I'm hopeful that as you all begin posting the schedules of when you'll be where, that the community pays close attention and participates in that process.
Yeah, you don't recognize 9/11 victims. You know, you're anti-Israel, and then
Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
cut off hate crimes against the Jewish community. Where's this division coming from? Like, where
I
did this
just want to
happen?
say one quick thing on this. I apologize, Dr. Reed. I almost made it out of here. I just wanted to say, I'm really appreciative it's your last minute coming here to share this. And just to remind people,
Is this the one who promotes nepotism? Which is for her own kid? Leave the
sessions as opposed to a regular meeting. By the time we come here, we're
That's the one.
with national items
that we've
Oh my goodness!
Now we're
How
not.
embarrassing.
Now we're
Like,
not
you get up and
enforcing
push
the
your
code
own
of
kid.
conduct in community participation too.
Many presentations and chance for board comment about our strategic plan, and that is one of our ongoing work sessions on our strategic plan. So I just wanted to remind folks that if they're looking for where we're digging into issues, go watch the YouTube videos of our work sessions. It's a great way to.
Oh, do watch those YouTube videos. Do watch.
So, having said that, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Oh, they're golden. They're golden.
If you ever question how dumb these board members are, go watch the
Yeah,
video.
you just watch those. You just watch that. Oh, our school board leads the way in dysfunction across the country.
Thank you to the students who came to speak tonight, Ollie and Sarah. You guys were truly the highlights of the meeting. We have made it to week 9, and we are close to the end of the first quarter. I know I'm secretly celebrating, and honestly, I can't believe how quickly time has passed.
Well,
it's been amazing
guys, what do you
seeing the
think?
accomplishments
I don't think
that
anything more
have been made at
substantive
every school, and all in all, just
will
witnessing
probably
a pretty
be.
great school year. I got the chance to
It doesn't
participate
seem
in
like
the
it.
strategic planning portion
Yeah.
of the meeting on Tuesday.
We already know that. I mean,
and
unless they
can't wait
try
see
to
the final
sneak something
product.
else at the very end,
with beneficial
we already
feedback
know
is
that Melanie
gathered.
Marin has a cutoff time, a hard
Tomorrow, I know
cutoff
that
time,
I'm
because she
gonna
likes to
take part in
leave
filming
meetings
videos to
early.
promote awareness
So,
as to
and we
what
know that
strategic planning is and
Karen
the
Gies
importance
Gamara
of
just hates
involving
even
the
being
students
there.
with the
Like, she would just
feedback
rather
that
zoom
they
in.
provide
So,
originally, I was going to go in a
Carl
completely
Frisch is even there
different
today.
direction with my
You know,
remarks.
I mean,
But,
after
after the
he
last
was
few hours,
in and out of that thing, just on calls the entire day.
important things to say.
You think we're guys are ready to
Earlier
wrap
in
this
the
one up with final
strategic
thoughts?
planning, a slide that stood out to me included the words student learning.
I think there was
and
one more
student
agenda item.
effectiveness. And I
The
understand
superintendent matters.
the commitment
You want to
that
hear
you're trying to
what Reed
make,
has to say?
at this point in time, I can
After that,
say
She's very,
that we're running in circles. I can see
Okay,
that.
yeah, okay,
I'm
we can
sure
talk
you all
about that,
recognize that
superintendent.
in yourselves, and my
Yeah,
peers
let's do
can
that.
100% see that themselves. I've said it before, and I will say it again until everyone here truly understands what it means. Equity leadership is everyone's work, and what students see informs how we engage, and how we engage informs how we act. Think about that and recognize the needs of students that are not being met. On the FCPS website, it says, our mission is to inspire and empower students. Today, we had the perfect opportunity to do just that, and look at what happened. I don't really have much left to say, but I really do have high hopes, and I think that once everyone collaborates together, once transparency is 100% effective, I think done will truly be.
Yeah, let's talk about transparency. Let's put out the average PSAT scores of each Thomas Jefferson class before and after it was the admissions were dumbed down. Let's put out the scores at each school of the AP scores.
Superintendent matters. I call
That's a student that was likely that's a
Thank you,
student
Madam
that
Chair.
probably has
pushing a woke agenda, right?
Or
if you're asking for a political position to come up and speak politically, you open yourself up to criticism. Harry, you and Stephanie may not speak for me, but when I was in high school, I could speak competently on these issues, and I never questioned somebody criticizing me. You know, if they want to participate in the Victim Olympics and criticize certain political positions, but say, "Oh, please don't criticize me,"
support staff and
then don't get up there to speak.
Amazing opportunities and amazing achievements going on really each and every day in small ways and large all across this division. And I want to mention
we got 17-year-olds who get drafted and certainly go serve in the military. I think she's confident she can withstand a little criticism.
Excellence Awards
Rational.
recognition evening, and that was such a nice event and such an incredible evening to recognize so many inspiring staff members across our division, and just their excitement and enthusiasm to be recognized for so many different gifts and contributions. It really was an inspiring evening, and I thank our instructional service I'll do with my evenings. But also want to mention that in terms of academics, and I know that our achievement is obviously very important. I want to report that our Fairfax County Public School seniors
to them?
in the class of 2022 last year performed well above state and global averages on the SAT. And I think that's something to be said given the conditions, obviously, that many students had throughout this pandemic, but to be above both our state, national, and global averages is pretty impressive. Our mean score of 1185,
I love when we choose statistics, how we don't talk about how they're comparing now versus how they were comparing before,
comparing then,
over the course of the last
we don't suck compare as bad as much as everyone else does.
Subtest scores posted above the state and global averages for students overall in an every reporting group, which I think is pretty impressive.
So we have very affluent
for us.
Students here in the area. We're not comparing apples to apples. We want to compare those to kids who have higher levels of poverty. So that's.
I know that Mason University on a lab school proposal, and we're very excited about that opportunity, which will provide $200,000 in planning dollars to look at an innovative lab school and pathways for credit for our students. And lastly, a reminder for our parent community that November is National Parent Engagement Month, and to really consider joining local communities and FCPS or PTOs as we support.
That was worth staying for. Oh my gosh.
That was worth it. That was worth it. That comment, you're right. That was worth it.
That's where they engage with you and give you the finger.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
No, right.
Agenda item
I think we should invite her.
Agenda item 4.01.
We should host like a parent engagement. Like we're not going to take anybody that doesn't have a kid in the school. You better be a parent, like, and invite her on, like across the county.
Issues that were discussed in the closed meeting. These issues may
you think
include
she would take
actions
us up
taken
on
regarding
that?
student disciplinary matters. Board members have discussed each
I think
of
that's probably the last
and at this
substantive
time will
thing
make
they
several
have for
motions
tonight.
to confirm the
I
recommendation.
think that was. Notice it was at the end. Like, yeah.
I move that the probationary
November
teacher
is
identified in
parent
closed session be
engagement
dismissed
month.
and his contract
We
not
should
be
make a
renewed
poster.
for the 2022-2023 school year.
Is there a second?
Do you think we should go in and have our pictures taken with them, right? Like parent engagement, yay, with the board.
Yeah, you know what we should? We should do that. Parent engagement month. We should just be like showing right up,
Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Cohen, and
Will they have another resolution and do another picture with a? We're not the right parents. We're not the right
Anderson,
ones.
Ms. Marin,
We're not the right ones.
Agenda item 5.
The ones they
consent
don't
agenda.
want to see.
Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure.
You
Robert
saw what
rules
happened
provide
when
for
the one
consent
speaker got
agenda
up and they were
listed
like, we don't like what you're saying, your narrative isn't convenient, we're gonna, wait, hold on, what's your name? And we all vote against you, get out.
What's amazing is that when you sign up as a speaker, you just say, yeah, I'm a resident. You don't present your ID. There's no picture ID provided. You don't have to present a photo ID to verify you are who you say you are when you go to speak. So how did they know to ask that question?
Somebody had to text. They had to text.
Somebody had to text.
There's no
Somebody
other
had to text.
explanation.
The following are new business.
They're like,
agenda
nope,
items.
what she's
There will
saying
not be a
is
vote on
it's
these
too
items this
inconvenient for the
evening.
narrative
Action
we're
is
trying to
scheduled at a
push,
future
so you need to.
I'm like,
you need to
ooh,
stop this.
they're like, ooh, what she's saying is not going to look good on the Washington Post. That's exactly what they were thinking. Ooh, this does not meet the Washington Washington Post test.
Call on Ms.
Ooh,
Corbett
let's
Sanders for
Now the
this
Washington
down.
Post has an even better story.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
That's right.
The governance committee had a very productive meeting
Why can't
yesterday.
why can't Nick Minaj pick that up as his next hit? You know, he hates politics.
I thought I heard somebody on a hot mic. I think I heard somebody on a hot mic say this is going to be in the news, like before they voted on it. We'll have to go back and listen to the footage when they were about to vote whether or not they should shut her down. So that'll be interesting to go back and see. I'm pretty sure I heard that.
On his suggested approach to
Oh,
revising
no
the
mask.
environmental stewardship,
Unsafe.
Policy.
I know,
we
right?
keep switching
it's,
around.
It's interesting how that happens, right?
Building renovation and infrastructure.
Well, COVID has stopped for right now. Like, she knows the hour parameters, so.
Policy 80.
So I think we need to stop and recognize, in addition to gender dysphoria being pervasive, it's also schizophrenia. Apparently, it's pervasive when you go on, off.
Looking with his staff, will be working with his staff on the following policies to be brought back to governance. These include vehicle replacement, policy 8611, security of buildings and grounds, policy 8612, and
maybe she got sick
transportation, walking and bicycling.
Around 7:30 and hurt herself back.
We also had a robust discussion about how to address the backlog in policies.
These are the people who are controlling Fairfax School Board
Will
policy.
be modified to include more information on the status.
It's literally the 11 most insane people out of the family.
Superintendent and her team.
Yeah, it is bad. I mean, and
finally, the committee had a brief discussion on the resolutions and recognitions.
This is what happens when people just have blind faith. I'm just going to vote, off the sample ballot and not realizing that. Hey, they went pretty far left on you.
The audit committee met on October 12th and reviewed the OAG report on the IT technology.
They went off a cliff. These people went off a cliff.
I'm so appreciative of Ms. Coe and her team, and would like to particularly thank Khalid Abu Diab for his work on this. We were very grateful to hear our staff response from the Chief Information Officer, Gautam Sethi, and his team. The IT team has made or is in the process.
Oh, I listened to this IT report. They're not even following the framework.
The entire process has been extremely collaborative. Thank you so much to both the OAG and IT teams.
Thank you. I call on Ms. McLaughlin for an update from the Public Engagement Committee.
Thank you. The Public
Engagement Committee go into that. Yeah, the IT infrastructure is a complete disaster. I mean, I can't believe that they didn't hire a CISO.
Any recommended changes that we might
that is going to be fun.
The full board
going through that.
We also wanted to make sure that the board was aware that the prior PEC did have.
All right, should we bring Stan back, guys?
For our citizen
wrap
advisory
up.
Committee handbooks, and that is pending a future work.
Yeah, we can go ahead and wrap up here, please.
To review, and then we also discussed surveying school board members and
Sam, you there?
Getting more clarification about school board member roles, serving as the liaisons for
I think we should maybe have like our next shadow board, like the working session, if they are actually, I remember the activist that was harassing me said, "Oh, they stream it online." I'm like, no, they don't. But if they do, we should have shadow board working session.
Dr. Reed and her
talk about it. Because that is comedy in action. Just seeing that.
23-24 calendar.
I mean,
I think it's worth it.
In the past, the PEC committee has.
Oh, it absolutely is worth it. I mean, you'll find out like some of these people are just professionally incompetent. I mean, it's not. I mean, yeah, there might be politically astute people like it, but then you realize, like, wow, they really don't know anything.
School board members might want to suggest that be added or included.
You wouldn't hire any
of the $4 billion budget.
No, I would not. No, they would never make it past a screening interview. They would not make it past the question.
We finally talked about
your HR person, like, these are the questions you're supposed to answer. These are the approved answers. I don't think you'd make it past that.
Because there's some
but they would not make it past
clarity that needs to happen about how are those opt-in, are they opt-out.
It does kind of explain like why do they go to such extreme.
Come in every month, every year.
I heard opt out.
How are those? We're making sure that, given that we know often
he's the only one that's like marginally competent.
They may miss an FCPS news message, but they will see our newsletters, open it up, and learn.
Oh, they're talking about opt-in or opt-out for their newsletters.
Anyway, those were kind of the highlights of what we're covering.
Yeah, they should go to the European model and go back to opting in.
Yes, for surveys, it should only be opt-in. Don't ask our children that nonsense. Can you imagine somebody just walking up to you randomly? Like I walk up to you randomly and I'm like, you guys, how often do you think about the perspective of people from different races? And let's say I don't know you at all. Like I'm a stranger and I just walk up to you randomly. It's like an inappropriate question to ask a stranger. So then why would you ask a kid that? Like it's none of your business. Mind your own business.
And hide it from their parents. Or how about like the surveys where they ask how many sexual partners they have each year?
Thank you.
You know,
right.
I mean, they
your other risky behavior.
Or other risky behavior, yeah. What other risky behavior? Don't worry. Would you be comfortable? I mean, just think about that. If someone coming up to your child and asking them these questions, and the person's writing down and taking all their information.
Well, I think we need to be equitable in these surveys. So, in addition to asking about the races, we should ask how many times do you think about other people with a different obesity profile than you, or a different height profile than you, or a different ideological profile. Why don't we just do everything in the book? How many times do you ask about the intersection of 5 or more of these people and how they
when you see a tall person, do you think, how's the weather up there? Actually, you have to think about the perspective.
I just feel like didn't Kareem spit on somebody saying it's raining when he did that to him?
Oh my gosh, I didn't hear that. Maybe it's not a good question. All the things you don't know.
Where do you think you would finish in the Victim Olympics this year?
Sign-up will open tomorrow, 10/21 at 6 a.m. on the FCPS School Board webpage.
So it sounds like y'all had some fun tonight.
Yeah, it was. It was comical. It was Sam. We're just thinking if they actually live stream some of these work sessions, we may actually have like our shadow board working sessions.
That'd be great.
Duty calls for it. I mean, when you actually see the sausage being made and just how bad it is, when you hear like the thought process or lack thereof, and you're just like, or just some of the questions that are being asked. And I wrote down a note. Like for those of you that have the time to.
It looks like they're killing the stream.
Yeah, they are. They probably will. All right, this is when it gets interesting. For those of you that actually have the time to watch the working session from the 18th, go to 4 hours, 52 minutes and 53 seconds, and you will just hear the most asinine question asked by Aurora Mesh. And it's just like the room is this quiet. They're like, "What are you? What? What?"
What was the question?
Basically, the question was like something like she was trying to it was regarding career and technical education, and she didn't want to say that she's referring to minorities, but she's like, "Well, you're talking about all this data, but let's go back to, well, what do you think are the references of education being for certain types of groups because they won't do well in normal education?" And I hate that word, but you know who I'm talking about. Keep it real. What do you think about, she's really trying to steer him into saying, I want you to talk about Hispanics, but not without saying it. He's just like, and the guy just says, "I really wish you didn't ask me this question." It's like.
That's what he answered with? That's what he said?
Yeah, that's exactly what he answered with. I mean, if it were a Republican that said something like that, it would be all over CNN. I mean, she basically would say, why is it we only she basically was trying to say, without saying it, why should only Hispanics be doing CTE programs or something like that? It just it's one of those shocking type of questions. You're just like, why would you even ask that question? First of all, it's not accurate. But that's basically what she did at that hour with that question, and try to pin him to say something like that was basically racist as hell.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap this up.
Sam, November is Parents Month, Sam, and we know how much the school board loves parents, so they did. Yep, Parent Engagement Month. It's good to notice.
Yeah, or I'm just curious of what parent groups they're gonna bring, because I mean it's, it's going to have to be handpicked. It's going to have to be like the very, very handpicked parents, probably with no kids left behind in the school system, I'm assuming. Probably all seniors like, oh, our kids came to the system while you weren't in charge, and they're gone. And since thank you for the letters of recommendation for their college of their choice, and so we're going to say whatever he wants to say. I'm willing to bet it'll be something like that. I would not be surprised if that's how it goes down. All right, Sam, we won't keep you up any longer. Let's wrap this up. Final thoughts. Let's start with you, Brian.
Well, just more of the same old, right? The main thing is nowhere to be found in this entire meeting tonight. Just pointless resolutions. The pointless resolutions trying to put in their quote unquote anti-racist, in which the leader says you have to discriminate now and forevermore to get equal outcomes. And nothing about special education, nothing about learning loss. Nothing about transparency or putting data out to the public. This is what we've come to expect from the Fairfax County School Board. So I would hate to say I look forward to the next meeting, just because there's probably going to be zero content. But stay tuned for additional information we can provide to the viewers during the next one.
I'm going to second that sentiment.
Yes.
Stephanie.
I echo everything that Brian just said, and I think in addition to that, I think that the community participation tonight was actually we had a lot of really great speakers tonight, and I think that how they handle community participation is so reflective of how they operate generally, which is to ignore all the people who they disagree with and try to highlight the people who they do agree with. And so in the last meeting, we saw that they had the camera at the faces of the speakers who were promoting the trans activist policies. They were mostly children who were given talking points, but they put the cameras right at their faces. And ironically, for the children this time, they didn't write their names down on the agenda, which I thought was funny given that they featured them by the face on camera last time, right? So, and then this time we had a lot of the speakers who were against racism. I'll just go ahead and say it, as the guy said, in Bizarro land, they a lot of parents were speaking out against that Truth initiative, masking CRT. And of course, they didn't get any extra speaking time like Robert Rigby got that one time. So yeah, it was just community participation again was just generally kind of reflective of how they handle things. And I'll say again, their code of conduct is very questionable. And the most interesting thing about that meeting, I think, was when they cut that woman off who was inconvenient to their narrative. I mean, that's a big story. So that's my final thought, I guess. I'd like to find out what she thought when she was up there getting cut off in the middle of a very, very important story about, oppression.
Yes, about hate crimes. About hate crimes.
Injustice.
Yes.
About hate crimes they're doing nothing about.
And so we ought to
all right. Well,
teach beyond that.
Speaking of interrupters here. All right, Sam,
inherently by removing that concept.
She's teaching us about systemic racism, Mr.
No. She is blathering on about something. She's nonsensical.
I know that's not the intent of my colleagues. I know my colleagues.
She did teach us about
empowering all our students and removing the blockers to their learning. But I'd like to.
I mean, it always good.
It's
almost like she's
really
like
did have to just tap into my conscience on that one.
Every
because
time
it's frustrating to have to continuously wrestle and just try to force a way to see how the more collaborative option, or allegedly collaborative, we talked about the limitations of that, is the better option when something is just clear. So
that's all this
my
meandering.
take for tonight, and I wish everyone a reflective and blessed night.
Wow.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan.
That's coming from a sober mind too.
All right.
Anyway, all right. All right. Let's just wrap this up.
Please.
Today. All right. Yes. All right, Sam. Thank you. I know it's been a long night. All right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. All right. Let's just see if they are actually.
The abuse that I have to endure sitting here watching these vapid and ridiculous YouTube comments.
Yeah, I've heard it. We've got like a person just dedicated to hate watching.
Slander Central, pal.
Slander
well,
Central.
no. No, not slander. This will be libelous because it's the written word.
Yeah, it's libelous. But thank you for watching and wasting 4 hours of your life to hate watch something like to harass parents. This shows where you are in life. Like literally where you are in life. On a Thursday night, you want to harass parents on a YouTube channel. You have nothing better to do.
And what's really hilarious is after about 3.5 hours of him just absolutely jamming on you guys, he finally says, does anyone care who any of you are? And I'm sitting here thinking, for the past 3.5 hours, you did, dude. My God, don't you have something better to do?
Something better to do. And I'll tell you what, for us, with our parents,
wait a minute, miss. No, wait a minute. No. Now this guy is Solo Falcon at 11:38. He says, oh, LOL. You wasted 4 hours hate trolling FCPS. Dude, you wasted 4 hours of your life with your ridiculous commentary and your libel and you're absolutely not adding anything productive to the conversation whatsoever. So you know what? At least the people that are here care enough to put their name and put their faces out there and get engaged and get involved. What are you doing? You're the troll. You're the loser. Go away. You're banned. Bye.
Solo Falcon sounds like a groomer name.
Whatever. He's out. He's out. Remove.
Here's the thing that they don't understand is that these are our kids, and just like you saw the parents that are there before the school board, we've been harassed, we've been trolled by activists, we've been doing shadow board. These are our kids. Like, we're going to keep coming. We're not going to stop coming. Like, we're hardwired to keep coming. We're never going to stop. You're never going to troll. You're never going to intimidate us. You're never ever going to deter parents that are going to be protecting their children. And for those of you
who care about academic excellence,
there is a way to stop all conflict, though. There is a way to stop all conflict. If you give parents vouchers and you give parents choice, then all the parents who hate FCPS and what it's become will never come and criticize your board members because we'll be out.
Yeah, you're right. We would be out at that point. But and otherwise, get used to it. I mean, and it's like you're not gonna. It is. I mean, nothing teaches you more patience than having to raise a child. I mean, they push you well beyond your limits, and you guys are just completely outgunned in that category. Like, if you've never raised a child, you should really just shut the ish up, because we're not gonna. When we see something that's not doing right by our kids, we're going to speak up and we're going to speak out against it.
There you go.
We're going to advocate for our kids.
All right.
And that's just the way it's going. That's just the way it is. All right. So thank you very much for those of you that do watch this. This was another episode of the Shadow Board. We're going to follow up to see what's going on with the work session meetings next week. Hopefully they advertise it. I don't know if they will. They might if we're going to have a presence there. But other than that, have a good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us.